Yes. Yes. Newspapers and a, it's heavy, so I'm gonna give it to you for Dr. Nimitz. I'll bet you. Yeah. Wait. Do you still? Oh my goodness. Now, do you want these newspapers? Yes. If you don't mind, I'm going Yes. Yes, because I'm telling you, it's heavy.
Oh, I know.
Between the two.
Okay.
Was it packed down there? Yeah.
I am very you. Yes, I am and you. I snagged one for the table. Because I had one that someone took it last night. I've always loved that. We need to be in there more. We're not in there very often. I can tell you that. You know WVU? Put it in there. Kid, how are you doing?
Go to the casino.
was afraid.
Hey, you were great yesterday. Thank you. How are you doing? Dr. Senator.
She's the one that took Dr. Nimitz. Yeah, she, like I said, and she's got her green jacket on. Get her, you get 16.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody had a nice evening. Please continue enjoying your breakfast as we get the program started.
At this time, I am going to ask that our Champions of Free Enterprise honorees make their way to the stage. You know, as we've said multiple times over the last couple of days, we are blessed to have a strong bench of state and Senate delegates and senators and delegates. They have just done very well with us. They work very well with the West Virginia Chamber. And frankly, it shows in the results. We are getting those results. So if you would, please hold your applause until everyone's name has been called out. We will take individual photos, and then there will be a group photo here as we wrap up. I'm going to ask Brian Dayton to come up and list off our honorees.
Thank you, everybody. And as we call your name, please make your way over to the left side of the stage with Steve Roby and Steve Roberts to receive your award and a quick photo. And then we will do a group photo afterwards. First up, Senate President Craig Blair.
Hey, Brian, where do you want it?
Yeah. Is this stage left?
Yeah.
All right. There. So the way he told me to do this is I hand it to you. You stand next to you, and Alex takes the picture.
Okay, there we go.
Alex, are we good?
You look good. Okay.
Am I holding my stomach in enough?
Perfect.
All right. More push-ups coming?
Yeah, you could have stooped down a little bit for me.
Thank you.
All right. Brian's
Thank you.
got this well orchestrated.
House Speaker Roger Hanshaw.
Senator Tom Plymel, did you announce him?
No, right.
Roger Hanshaw.
We're still working out the details of this.
Did
Still get
somebody
it.
told me
Still
my
get there.
mask was on?
There we go. Nice. Good job. Thank you.
Last time I watched Brian.
Senate Majority Leader Tom Takubo.
We're about to figure this out.
Yeah.
You're getting good. Perfect. Good job. Thank you. Thanks, Doug.
House Majority Leader Amy Summers.
What are we doing? Are you thinking we're about to figure it out?
We're getting there. We're getting there. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm just hoping.
Senate Majority Whip Ryan Weld.
Thank you.
Morning.
You're supposed to take this and
You're
stand
right in the middle there.
All right.
If you wouldn't mind.
By the 20th time, we'll get it right.
Okay, beautiful. Nice. Good job. Thank you. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
In a previous life, I was captain of the Titanic.
House Majority Whip Paul Espinosa.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you for being here.
Oh, look at that. This one's perfect here. There we go. Good job. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
House Judiciary Chairman Moore Capito.
I gave you the right answer.
Skinny guy.
Yeah, that's right. All right. There we go. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Senate Finance Chairman Eric Tarr.
Appreciate you. Thank you. We appreciate your service.
Here, we've got it down to an auditorium.
All right. All right. There you go. Good job. Thank you.
We're actually about to get it right.
Yeah, that's right.
House Finance Chairman Eric Householder.
All right. Okay. And we appreciate you.
All right. Very nice, right here. Good job. Good to be here.
Senate Education Chairman Patricia Rucker.
We never know where it's coming from.
All right. Nice. Good job.
House Technology and Infrastructure Chairman Daniel Linville.
Speak up, Brian. Even I can't hear you.
There you go, that'll work.
Wait a minute. You're not taller than I am.
Here, I'll go like this, okay? All right, great. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Eric Nelson.
Senator Eric Nelson.
Important parts. Yeah. There we go, right here, gentlemen. Thank you.
Am I the only one who can't button his jacket?
And Senator Bob Plommel.
Senator Robert Plummer, who I call Tom.
Thank you.
I've only known him all my life.
There you go.
And I should mention that we had two champion winners that were unable to be with us this morning, but will certainly be receiving the award. That is Senate Judiciary Chairman Charles Trump and Senator Mike Woelfel. They were unable to be here this morning, but they are also champions of free enterprise for their excellent work. Thank you.
All right, class of 2021, turn your tassels.
Sure, why not? See Robertson there.
Okay, now everybody going that way. All right. There we go. Now we got everybody on there.
Come on, Steve, move over here.
Yeah. Okay, get in a little tighter.
All right, you told me to stand by the podium.
Yeah, I know. I want to be out of the picture with that one. All right, right here. Hold on one second.
Another chair.
I know if you get on the roof, what happens? Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Rhodes,
Thanks,
thank you.
Steve. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll keep my remarks brief.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much.
You want us to stay up here
Yes.
or go down?
No, I think you're supposed to, you're going to say something here.
Blair remarks.
Yep. You can tell we've got this down to a well-oiled machine here. We are going to ask that our Senate President Craig Blair come to the podium and have a few words on behalf of the Senate members.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the chamber for the award. I don't take praise very well, but what I will tell you is that we had my understanding is the largest group that's ever been up here. What you've seen, though, was a team wanting to advance West Virginia. As I spoke yesterday about in COVA and how I ended up in the legislature, we went from 50th to 1st. Ladies and gentlemen, we can do that in every category there is out there. With your help. Good morning. I can't stress this enough, the teamwork that takes place. And it's not whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. It's about whether we can make West Virginia a place where people want to work, raise their family, and make a profit. You know, profit's not the right word that I'm wanting to use for it, but an income that is worthy. West Virginia will be and is going to be the place to do that. I'm going to add one more thing that I'm going to stop. And then since we took over the Republicans in 2015, the per capita income in West Virginia has went up $5,216. Ladies and gentlemen, that's astounding. That's astounding. And it doesn't have anything to do with the work that the legislature's done, other than taking some of these onerous laws off the books. But it's got everything to do with the businesses in the state of West Virginia putting people to work. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to be up here today and yesterday. And we're going to keep working hard for you into the future. And I can't wait till West Virginia is number one.
All right, now I'd also like to invite Speaker Roger Henshaw to the podium to say a few words on behalf of the House.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Steve Roberts. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the members of the House who were privileged to be honored this morning, we want to say thank you for your continued support of what we're trying to do to advance the ball here in West Virginia. Yesterday, I said to a smaller gathering of the members earlier or later in the evening that if you asked every Republican, if you asked every Democrat, if you asked, in fact, every member of the House and the Senate why she or he put their names on a ballot to run for public office in West Virginia, the overwhelming majority of members would respond that they ran for public office just because they wanted to see growth and development and change in our local communities around West Virginia. No one ran for public office because they had too much free time. They ran for public office because they wanted to see positive change and growth in our communities around West Virginia. And all the men and women who were privileged to stand on this stage this morning have taken those votes over the course of the past year and helped us make the change that put us into that top 10 ranking for the Site Selection Consulting magazine that you heard discussed yesterday. That's a tremendous opportunity for us as West Virginians to take another step forward and let the rest of the world know what we have known for years, that West Virginia is a great place to live, work, and raise your family. On behalf of all the members of the House, we thank you for your support of the efforts that we're trying to continue now. We do not plan to stop. In fact, we intend to press forward as hard as we can and move up that list of rankings. Thank you very much.
All our honorees are going to be headed across the room at the Chesapeake Bay Room. So this is an excellent opportunity if you'd like to talk to any of our senators or delegates. They'll be across the hall. And again, I'd like to thank them for their service. They've done yeoman's work. You know, this is not part of the script, but it's a new addition. Brian and Steve will thank me later. This is a social update of things you ought to be aware of that are not publicly known. First of all, if you see Pat Graney, you should recognize that he is a grandfather. Well, he's grandfather many times over, but his son Gov and his daughter-in-law Claire just had a little baby girl. So feel free to recognize that. But wait. There's more. So we have Danielle Waltz and Patrick Smith getting married this weekend. So if you see them, wish them well over the weekend. All right, at this time, I would like to ask our state auditor, J.B. McCuskey, to come to the stage to introduce our next speaker. I'm good at ad-libbing. Go ahead, take your time. So, JB, thanks for being here, and we appreciate your service as auditor. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing this morning? Good? We awake? Where's Sally? Hi, Sally. It's nice to see you. So I'm going to introduce Sally Embry to you guys, and Sally, I'll just start with, is a West Virginian. Her family started in Huntington, and they had a restaurant there, and she's now come back to help us out. And so Sally is probably the smartest person that I've ever met, and I'll tell you how I know that. So Sally works with a company called Data Robot, and I'm very, very blessed to get to work with them in my capacity in the auditor's office. And the reason that she and they are wildly important is that they've made an actual commitment to West Virginia. And for the first time in maybe my life, we have a company who is leading the way in a technology field that is leading the way, who's decided that West Virginia is the place that they want to be. They have 5 offices. It's Kiev, Boston, San Francisco, Chicago, and Morgantown. Did I get those right? So one of those 5 is a little different than the other 4. And what I believe that they've found and what they're going to find is that West Virginia is a community that builds up its members. And I remember the first time that the team came to West Virginia, and they came across the line, and you guys had to ride in a bus because somebody needed internet. Was that correct? They couldn't fly. And we just sat down, and they looked at me, and they said, this is exactly what you told me it was going to be. And they could tell from the very beginning that they had entered a place that welcomed them, wanted them here, and was going to support all of their efforts. And I can't wait to hear Sally speak, and I hope that you guys will give her a warm welcome, because what they're doing is they're taking our government and they're moving it into the 21st century. And what is, in my opinion, the most important about this project is that people from outside of West Virginia will be able to look at us and say, they're doing what we all wish we could do, they're doing what we all should be doing, and we will become a model for how data is analyzed in the government sphere, and hopefully, through COVID, we will become the model for how every single rural state manages a pandemic, manages the health and well-being of all the citizens that live, particularly in places where health care is a little harder to come by, a little further from the house, and quite frankly, a little less looked upon as a priority. So Sally, please come on up. Again, it's truly a pleasure to get to introduce you, and she will be routinely and completely more interesting than me. So you guys enjoy Sally, and thank you all for having me.
Hi, everyone. If I wasn't nervous, that lovely introduction just made me so. So thank you so much, JB. That was incredibly kind. So like it said, my name is Sally Embry. I'm the VP of Public Health and Health Technologies at DataRobot. DataRobot just opened an office in Morgantown in early June. We've so far hired about 10 employees in all different types of fields. And then we are also hiring across the state. Our goal is to grow rapidly across the state of West Virginia. And today, what I'd like to talk about is a little bit more about what DataRobot is. Because if you talk to any of our folks, we're going to say that we are passionate about the democratization of AI. And I wanted to take a moment to think, what is that? What is the democratization of AI? What is AI? And how can it be used and applied to overhaul people's businesses and also help improve things like long-term health outcomes, like the things JB mentioned. And then just also stepping back for a second, I just wanted to say what an honor and a privilege it is to be here. If you talk to our CEO, Dan Wright, he's going to tell you how we came to West Virginia, and he had conversations with John Chambers and JB and just was so inspired by the leadership of the state, and that is definitely true. But as somebody who grew up in West Virginia, as someone who grew up in Huntington, it is just such a privilege to be back in the state and know that we are creating opportunities that haven't existed previously. And there is an opportunity for kids to grow up from across the state and be able to thrive here and have high-paying jobs here and be on the cutting edge of technology here. So I am incredibly inspired and honored, and thank you so much. So let me dive in. So who is DataRobot? So DataRobot was actually founded in 2012. We are a pre-IPO late-stage startup, which means it's a really great time to get to know us. We created the AutoML, so automated machine learning. We were the category creator for that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what machine learning is and AI, just briefly, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. We work across many different industries, many different clients, and a large makeup of our company is data scientists and engineers. And we were founded on the idea that there is always going to be more and more and more data. I'm sure everyone in this room has felt the fact that there is more and more and more data all the time. But there aren't necessarily the systems to process that data and to actually gather insights from that data at the scale that is needed. And so what DataRobot seeks to do is automate a lot of those hard data science, machine learning problems in order to allow researchers, analysts, data scientists, and even non-data scientists to get insights from their data in a way that they would previously be unable to do so because it would take too much time to even basically scratch the surface. And so we are essentially a software company, but we also help teach and enable folks how to learn and apply AI to the world's toughest problems. We work with thousands of different customers across many different industries. So we have been growing by leaps and bounds. We just had our, I think, Series G. We've been funded over $1.2 billion, and our valuation is currently at $6.4 billion. We have offices all over the world, as JB alluded to, though obviously I'm most proud about our office in Morgantown. Now, the reason why it's so important that we work across all these different industries is because we are data agnostic. We will take in any type of data into our system, process it, and try to run AI and ML models against it so we can gather those insights. We're also industry agnostic because everyone has data, everyone has problems. So if you have data and a problem, we can work with you on that. And then what's also great about being industry agnostic is means that we can learn from other industries and apply it in new ways to other industries. So we're constantly learning and improving and getting better over time. These are just a few examples of the ways that we've been able to help some of our clients. And this is more of a monetary focus, obviously, but we helped increase revenue for a manufacturer by $200 million through better demand forecasting. We've helped improve patient outcomes in hospital systems, saving tens of millions of dollars. And we can do everything from patient outcomes to helping with staffing problems, staffing demand generation. And we also helped increase revenue by $90 million for a convenience retailer through tracking and inventory uptake. So I've talked about AI, data science, machine learning. What are all these words really? At its simplest, it's really just making predictions about the future. So when we think about business intelligence, and business intelligence is crucial for your business. A lot of people use business intelligence and analytics to understand the state of the present state. But at its core, business intelligence is taking past information and trying to understand the present. What am I going to do right now based off the information that happened in the past? What machine learning is, what artificial intelligence is, what is learning from the past. And generally, a data scientist is going to use learnings from the past in order to predict what's going to happen in the future. So you can actually be ahead of the curve. And then what DataRobot does specifically is takes that data scientist, makes them more powerful, and helps automate many of their processes so they can get to the toughest problems, and helps people who are not data scientists apply the same technologies that a data scientist would. So we help making sure that you have the technology you need to see into the future. So how does this work? Sounds very complex. So I'm going to walk through a couple examples. At its most fundamental, it's basically a 5-step process. We get data. That's one of the most crucial parts. We need the data in order to actually build analytics on it. Then we're going to train a model. And so this is generally a machine learning model, but we'll just call it the model. Then we're going to make predictions based after we build out this model. We're going to get new data, and we're going to make predictions based off that new data. And then what we want to do is apply insights. We don't want to just create a model and say, oh, those numbers, those are cool. No, we actually want to help guide and generate insights for how to improve your business or whatever your outcome and goals are. We want to make sure that we are moving the needle. And then we also cannot just create a model, set it, and forget it. You got new data coming in all the time, right? And so if you have this new data, what you need to do is continually train your model, improve your model over time, and make sure that you are always operating at your peak efficiency. So this is really overall just the basic 5 steps that you'll hear when it comes to what DataRobot can do and what AI and machine learning is. So I'm going to walk through a little bit of an example here. So I like this example because our data source here is pictures. So this first step, get data. We have a database of 50,000 pictures. 25,000 of those pictures are unhealthy leaves, and 25,000 pictures are healthy leaves. So we want to build a model to understand if a plant gets sick. If we have an unhealthy plant, I want to understand immediately if that plant is unhealthy or not. So I'm going to train a model based off these 50,000 pictures and say this plant is healthy, this plant's unhealthy, or this leaf's healthy, this leaf's unhealthy. And then I'm going to build a model that makes that prediction. And then when I'm out hiking or doing whatever outside, I see a leaf, I can take a picture, upload that picture to my model, or ingest that into my model, and say, get a prediction. Is this leaf healthy or not healthy? And then from that, I want to make decisions. I want to guide myself in terms of what I just learned. Is this healthy or unhealthy? So That sounds, it's a little simplistic in the sense that, like, I'm just looking at healthy and unhealthy leaves. But what I can actually do is, what's the type of leaf? What's the type of disease? Is this a fungus? Is this a parasite? There's lots of ways to break down this data as long as you have that data to feed in initially. So just kind of walking through why something like this might be important, why even a simplistic example like this is important. So there's actually a tree disease that is spreading through Hawaii right now. And the current process for understanding the spread of this disease is pretty complex. So you basically have a team of researchers going out, hiking through the Hawaiian jungle rainforest, and they're just looking for sick trees. And when they find one, they basically cut down a piece of the tree. They have a very complex process for drilling and taking an axe to it, and then they put the sample into a refrigerator, and they bring the sample back to the lab, and they test that sample. And then after they test the sample, if the disease is sick, they put a little dot on the map, and they say, that was a sick tree. And then also because of COVID, the Department of Agriculture has been closed for 18 months. They also, haven't done anything for 18 months in terms of being able to address the problem. So that's the current process for how you find out if there's a dot on the map for a sick tree. But with AI, if you have enough data, if you have enough training data, you could just take a picture of that tree. You're not out in the woods taking samples, finding a refrigerator, driving them to the lab, worrying if the lab is closed. You're just taking a picture and saying, oh, okay, that tree is unhealthy. You've saved so much time. Instead of spending time on just putting a dot on the map, you now are able to actually drive these decision-making forward. It's not just saying, oh, a sick tree is here. What are we going to do about it? How do we stop the spread? How do we stop this from moving forward? So now you can actually focus on the real problem, which is that these trees are dying, and not just finding out where these trees are. But what happens, so like I said, that's a complex but relatively straightforward example. What happens when the problem is far more complex? So I think, it's been about 18 months of COVID, and this is a little bit of a trigger warning because I'm going to talk about COVID for a minute, and it's scarring. But I think we all know that COVID has been a fairly complex problem, and it has been very difficult for everyone to deal with. And when I joined DataRobot, I actually joined in the middle of our COVID efforts to lead some of our COVID initiatives, because at the start of the pandemic, DataRobot reallocated 50% of our R&D resources to fighting COVID-19 as a data science problem. And we thought it was the world's biggest data science problem, and we wanted to have an impact there. And so throughout the pandemic, if you look at headlines, and actually this is slightly out of date in the sense that these are headlines from the past year. I just saw new headlines come out this morning around the CDC. But the lack of data, or missing data, incomplete data, was a consistent theme of our inability to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. We kept saying, well, we can't do this without data, we can't do that without data. And then by the time that data evolved, it was often too late for us to actually make a dent. So as I said, DataRobot really was passionate about the fact that this is a data science problem. COVID-19 is a data science problem. How can we solve for it? And so we built an extremely complex forecasting model in order to predict COVID-19 surges months and even up to a year in advance. And we did this using hundreds of different data sources and breaking those data sources down and trying to understand the accuracy of those data sources and trying to understand when there are differences in the data that occurred as well. So just because you would think if Los Angeles is reporting cases and California is reporting cases and the feds are reporting cases, those would all be the same number. They're usually not. So you have to go back and make sure which source is right. How do I actually ensure the forecasting? How do I actually create a model that's going to be accurate? So we broke down these hundreds of resources, data sources. We put them through DataRobot. We created predictions, and then we provided insights to leadership in order to make decisions on what do we do next, and how do we understand where the surge is going to occur, which areas are most at risk, where do we need to open up testing sites, where do we need to open up vaccination sites. And we are just so proud of the work that we did. And this is just a sample to kind of give you an idea of how accurate we were able to get with our forecasting models. So this is a forecast from November 23rd, 2020. And so black is what actually happened, and blue is what DataRobot said was going to happen on November 23rd. And you can see that up until about May, we are almost perfectly in line, maybe a little more pessimistic, but pretty perfectly in line with what actually happened on the ground with regards to COVID-19. Imagine having a 6-month warning signal in terms of understanding when the next surge is going to occur, where staffing surges need to occur, where PPE needs to be moved to. And if you look at the end, you might see, or you're going to see the actuals start ticking up, and we have it still going down. And that's because the actuals start going up because the Delta variant emerged. And in November, there was no Delta variant. So our model does include variants, and we do look at things. So if you zoomed into our model when Delta variant emerged, you'd see an uptick there too. But I think this still gives you a really great idea of how advanced we can be in terms of being able to be basically putting our best foot forward and not only looking back in the past and only concerned about, and not being concerned, or being able to be more proactive about moving forward. So I hope these two examples show how we can solve big problems. And the way that we do this is, so we would also like to make sure that we're working with everyone. And so the way that we go about this is you don't have to be a data scientist. You don't have to be an analytics guru. You don't have to have the world's most advanced IT team. Those things are nice, but they're not necessary. What you do need to have is a problem that you want to solve. Keyword, you want to solve it. You need to have data. You need data in relationship to that problem. And you need to have a drive to solve for that problem as well. And what DataRobot will help you do is we can help you solve for thousands of different use cases. And so we work across all industries, we want to help all types of people, and we want to help all different outcomes. So I've talked a lot about kind of financial incentives at this point, but obviously our work in COVID-19 means way more than ROI. It means saving actual lives. And we have recently been engaged with a partnership in the state of West Virginia where the Joint Interagency Task Force led by General Hoyer and Clay Marsh and Cabinet Secretary Crouch are actually using our analytics in the state of West Virginia to try to predict and move forward with how to combat COVID-19 directly within the state. And that is something that we are incredibly proud of, that the state has taken initiative to use this cutting-edge technology to make and drive decisions. But also looking back at the ROI for a second, because I know many people here are business folks, DataRobot's in a report that DataRobot commissioned in order to understand the true impact of our work. DataRobot's platform achieved over a 514% ROI and often repaid for itself in a short matter of months. So we want to help save lives. We want to be the cutting-edge future to help increase and improve rural health outcomes. Again, as a Huntingtonian, it's very important to me. But we can also help your business. We can also help your bottom line. We're here to solve big problems. We're also hiring. So as I said, we have an office in Morgantown, but we are hiring all over the state. So if you have folks that are really excited about data science or just folks that want to be a part of an organization that is moving forward, we're hiring across technical and non-technical positions. Just check us out at solvebigproblems.com. Thank you so much. And I think I have a little time to take a question or two if you were interested. Thank you. Yes. Hopefully I can answer. So the question was where are the servers to support the operation. So we can do on-prem or we can do in the cloud. We are very... Yes, yes. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Sally. Great presentation, and I'm glad you're in West Virginia. This is an education question. Is data analytics sufficiently differentiated that it should become a distinguishable part of the STEM effort in terms of education?
I would say so. So yeah, that's a great question. So data analytics is the future. Like I said at the start, there's always going to be more data. Our constraint is the people to analyze that data and the tools to analyze that data. So it is a great job market and should be something that is the focus of kids and students. And we actually are trying to we're already working very closely with WVU. They've been an incredible partner for us. We've hired several university grads out of WVU's business and analytics program. But what we'd actually also like to do in addition to our partnership with WVU is be working with the community and technical colleges and also integrating initial learnings into the K-12 program too. Thank you. All right. Thank you again so much. It was such an honor.
Sally, thank you. That was fabulous. I would love to have that enthusiasm and passion like she did. That made data very interesting, so thank you. Our next presenter is someone that's very familiar to us. It is Dr. John Deskins. John is the director of the Bureau of Business and Economic Research and is an associate professor of economics at WVU. He leads the Bureau's efforts to serve the state by providing rigorous economic analysis and macroeconomic forecasting to our business leaders and policymakers across the state. John's academic research is focused on economic development, small business economics, and public policy. It is my pleasure to bring Dr. John Deskins to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And thanks to all of you folks at the Chamber for having me here. Of course, coming here to the Business Summit is one of my favorite events out of the whole year. I'm so happy that we're back this year so we can be here in person, hang out, and have a really good time. So this morning, I promise you up front, I'm not going to throw too much cold water on all of our happy times that we're having here at the Greenbrier. I promise you that. I'm going to start off by talking about how we've made it through COVID. And just to give you a little bit of a preview, that's pretty good. We've actually fared pretty well through COVID. We fared a lot better than what I would have expected the spring of last year, I'll tell you that. So that's a good part of the presentation. And then I'm going to turn my attention to the long-run challenges that we face in West Virginia, that we still have. And the presentation will go downhill a little bit during that middle part. But I'm telling you this up front because I don't want you to get discouraged. I don't want you to get down in the dumps because I'm going to close with a discussion of the economic development opportunities that we have here in West Virginia. And I think we have a lot of really good opportunities. I think we are on the cusp of some real positive change in West Virginia. So the presentation will close with some good stuff. So when I'm in the middle, don't get down, don't worry about it. So for starters, how have we fared through COVID? Just real quick, this is just the headline employment number for West Virginia, the blue line, and for the nation there for comparison, starting in January of last year through this summer. And you see kind of how it's looked. Overall, West Virginia lost 14% of our jobs when COVID hit really hard last year. The loss that we suffered in West Virginia was not quite as bad as the loss that we saw nationally, as you see there in the figure. And we've made pretty steady progress since last summer. Right now, we are kind of almost exactly even with the nation in terms of how much ground we still have yet to recover. Bottom line is we lost 14% of our jobs, and right now, as of the most recent data, we're about 4% below where we were in January of last year in terms of the total number of jobs in West Virginia. I have this in an indexed approach so you can compare to the nation, but if you just want the raw numbers, West Virginia lost about 100,000 jobs. After the data were revised, blah, 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 we lost about 100,000 jobs. We have about 25 or 30,000 jobs yet to go before we get back to where we were for starters. And overall, the economic forecasting that we do, in the College of Business at WVU, we think that by the early part of next year, we will have gained back those last 25 or 30,000 jobs, and we will have fully recovered from COVID. Just one more statistic, I just showed you the employment number. Here I'm showing you the total economic output number. You see the loss there in economic output for the nation and for the state. And you see the recovery back over the more recent quarters. Overall, the trajectory in West Virginia has kind of been uncanny, actually, in terms of how close we have tracked with the nation. And in terms of output, as you see, we have actually fully recovered. Full recovery has already taken place in terms of economic output in the state and in the nation, even though we haven't had the full employment recovery. The last statistic that I'll show you to characterize COVID is the unemployment rate. Here you see what's happened with unemployment. We started out last year at an unemployment rate of about 5% right before COVID struck. 5%, it was higher than what the nation was seeing last year, but 5% is a good rate for unemployment by any kind of long-run historic comparison. It was higher than the nation because the nation had unusually low unemployment at the time. But anyway, the rate jumped from 5%, skyrocketing up to 16% virtually overnight. But the rate has fallen pretty much right back down to where it was, right back down to 5%. And as you see, we're kind of right on par with the nation in terms of the unemployment rate. Now, I will say that's a little bit distorted because when people just leave the labor force and quit looking for work, they're no longer counted as unemployed the way this unemployment rate is calculated. So it's not completely because of people finding jobs that rate has recovered. It's also recovered because of labor force attrition to some extent. But the bottom line is the unemployment rate looks pretty good after COVID. So altogether, with these statistics, with the relatively rapid recovery that I think we have made through COVID, I think it's okay for us to kind of turn our attention away from this short-run turmoil that we've seen, turn our attention back to the long-run challenges and get our focus back to making our state more attractive to potential businesses, making our state more attractive over the longer run. So that's where we'll go next. Now, to take a more long-run perspective, here's kind of the negative part of the presentation. Again, I'm going to warn you again, it's going to get more positive, but there's a couple slides here that just flat out don't look good. Here's job growth over the past decade, from 2010 right up until COVID hit in 2020. And there you see West Virginia is actually 50th among the 50 states in terms of overall job growth over the entire decade. So overall, long-run economic performance has just honestly, flat out, not been good in our state. Of course, this is due to coal and the tremendous losses we've seen in coal output and a variety of other factors, the rural nature of our state and some other issues. But that's our long-run job growth, lowest in the nation. This is economic output growth by state, exact same picture, same parallel to the previous figure. As far as output growth goes, we're ahead of about five, I forget the exact count, but we're ahead of about 5 other states there in terms of growth in economic output over the long run. So long-run challenges remain as evident in these long-run growth pictures. This picture is what you all constantly hear me preaching about. I know that many of you have heard me speak before, and this is kind of my standard sermon. I think this picture captures the biggest economic development challenge that we face in West Virginia, labor force participation. Unemployment rate that I showed before already, unemployment rate looks good. The unemployment rate captures, among everyone who wants to work, how many people are working versus how many people are just actively looking for work. And that picture's okay. But this picture is more fundamental and more long-run in nature. This picture captures how many people want to work in the first place. Never mind whether they're looking for work or whether they actually have a job, how many people want to work in the first place. And here you see West Virginia is dead last among the 50 states in terms of labor force participation. Nationally, the rates have fallen a little bit during COVID, but I think the rates will return back to what they were as we continue to recover from COVID. But let's just say pre-COVID numbers, nationally about 63% of the adults wanted to work. Obviously, you have people who are retired, you have people who are in school, you have people who are stay-at-home parents. 63% was the national rate of labor force participation. West Virginia, we're down there at about 55%. We have been 50th among the 50 states in terms of this particular statistic literally for decades. And this is the biggest economic development challenge that we face. We have to get that yellow bar to move to the right if we ever want to achieve the levels of economic prosperity that we hope for in West Virginia. So when I come back to talking about economic development strategies, I'm going to come back to this same statistic here in just a few minutes because I think this is the most important statistic that we face. This shows just overall annual wage and salary income per job. There you see the national figure and the state figure. There you see that we've kind of followed along the nation. We haven't really closed that gap any over the past decade. The differential between wage and salary income in West Virginia and the nation has pretty much stayed the same. Right now we're ahead of about 4 other states in terms of wage and salary income. Total per capita income It's the same story. We've kind of trucked along there with the same differential between West Virginia and the nation. This figure shows per capita personal income for all 50 states. And it's still the same old story. It's still, thank God, for Mississippi. We are still 50th among the 51 states if you count D.C. as a state, which I do in this particular figure. We are still 50th among 51 for per capita personal income, and thank God that we have Mississippi there to pull up the tail end. This is a pretty shocking statistic. This figure shows you, out of all the personal income received in the state, how much of that comes from the federal government. This captures Social Security retirement income as well as all other forms of transfer payments that come from Washington. As you see, West Virginia is number one among the states. And in West Virginia, I think, actually some of you might be shocked to hear that we're over a third of the total income in West Virginia comes from the federal government. And you see there the degree to which we're ahead of the second highest state. And we've been number one for a long time. This is 2020 data, and all the states rose in terms of the statistic for 2020 because of all the federal interventions that took place and because of the recession. But the differential between West Virginia and the other states has pretty much been the same, even though all states rose during that year. So that's an issue that we need to be aware of and conscious of as we think about developing our state over the long run. Here's the population number, just one more statistic just before I close this long-run focus portion of my talk. There you see how the U.S. population has grown by, I forget the exact number, I think it was about 7 or 8% over the decade. The U.S. population grew, and as you know from the news a couple weeks ago, West Virginia actually fell by just a little bit more than 3% in terms of population over that period. So population numbers don't look good, and there is population growth for all 50 states. You see West Virginia is lowest among the states in terms of this metric. Only 2 other states lost population at all. West Virginia lost a relatively sizable portion of our people with the 3-point-something% decline. I'll elaborate this on just really quickly before I move on to talk about happier things, before I move on to talk about economic development in our state and the opportunities that we have before us. One of the grim statistics that we face in West Virginia is the fact that we face natural population decline. We have more deaths than we have births, and nowadays the differential there is about 4,000. So we're losing 4,000 or a little bit more than 4,000 people a year because deaths outnumber births. And that's a statistic that has been with us for a decade now, or almost a decade. That's a statistic that's going to stay with us. There's not a whole lot that we can do to change that in the short run. The positive here is with, not positive lately, but in terms of the potential positive, is with migration. The migration numbers, which is the second component of population change, the migration numbers are very volatile. We've been losing people to migration over the past few years. We've been seeing more people move out than we've seen people move in, so we've seen negative net migration. But the numbers are very volatile, and I think we have reason to believe that with some of the opportunities that we have ahead, we have reasons to think that we can turn that population number around. We can turn the migration number around and overall turn the total population growth number around correspondingly. But that's what it's looked like over the last decade. So now I'm going to talk about my economic development priorities, and here's where the rays of hope come into the talk. Economic development priority number 1, again, with what I've already been preaching this morning, human capital. I showed you that statistic on labor force participation. I showed you already that West Virginia is 50th among the 50 states in terms of labor force participation. The first thing that you thought just a second ago when I showed you that statistic was, oh, is this just because we're an older state? Is this low rate of labor force participation just simply because we have a lot of retired people in West Virginia? The answer is that does matter, of course. The fact that West Virginia is one of the oldest states in the country does make a difference, of course, in terms of labor force participation. But here I'm showing you a different statistic. This is labor force participation just for prime working age. Economists define prime working age as people who are between 25 and 55. And even for prime working age, we're still dead last in terms of labor force participation. So the issue is so much more fundamental, so much more important to West Virginia than just simply the fact that we have an older population. Again, we have to get that yellow bar to move to the right. That has to be one of their top economic development priorities. I can't stress how important this is. Why are we so far behind? Why are we 8 percentage points behind the national figure in terms of labor force participation? It all relates to human capital. One reason is education. We have some people in the state who want to work. Not everyone, but we have a lot of people in West Virginia who want to work, but they know that their education, their training, their job preparedness just isn't up to par. They know they're not going to get hired if they look for work. They don't even bother to look for work in the first place. These poor education outcomes, these poor training outcomes, these poor outcomes related to job preparedness is one reason why West Virginia is behind. That's one reason why we lag in terms of labor force participation. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can show, education or training or workforce preparedness. I'm just showing you kind of a simple statistic, the share of the population that has a bachelor's degree. There's a bunch of different ways that I could show this, but with this one particular statistic, you see that West Virginia is last among the states in terms of the share of our adult population that has a bachelor's degree. We have to work on that problem, get that yellow bar to move to the right. Another reason is health. It's kind of the same story. We have a lot of people who would like to work in a perfect world, but they have some health problem that's preventing them from working. I'm showing you here the overall mortality rate, which is just the biggest picture, the broadest way of capturing overall health. But I could show the same picture for diabetes, cancer, obesity, smoking, lack of exercise. There's a whole bunch of different statistics, and the story is always the same. West Virginia is always bad on those health outcome measures. So we have to create a healthier West Virginia to get more of our people in the workforce to help make our state more attractive to potential businesses. And a third reason here is, of course, this drug abuse problem that we faced in West Virginia. Kind of the same story. We have people who would like to work in a perfect world, but they've managed to get caught up in this tragic, horrible cycle of drug abuse. And they know they can't pass a drug test. They know they can't hold on a job because of their addiction. They don't even bother looking for work in the first place because of this problem of drug abuse. Here's just one statistic, the drug overdose death rate for 2019. There you see West Virginia was highest in the country in terms of the drug overdose death rate. I keep preaching on this issue because these are long, very difficult to solve problems that we have to ultimately solve in West Virginia. I wish that all of our problems were simply the fact that we had horrible, horrible, horrible tax policy. I wish that was our problem. I wish that's what was keeping us down in West Virginia, was horrible tax policy, because that's something that we could fix overnight. Right? That would be easy to fix. But these problems that I'm pointing to, these problems around education, health, drug abuse, these problems are long-term problems that take a long time to fix. And this is something that we have to keep our focus on for years and years and years to really see a difference. But I think it's worth that focus because I think these issues are so important, so fundamental. I don't think we're ever going to achieve the prosperity that we ultimately hope for and deserve as West Virginians without tackling these problems. As far as this workforce issue goes, there's a myriad of other issues as well. I'm highlighting these issues because I think these issues deserve attention and deserve focus, and they're so important. But there's other issues, too. There's things like abuse of the welfare system. It's hard for me to really speak to that issue because there's not good data on it. I don't really have good data to show how much abuse there is. And frankly and honestly, I don't really know what policy measures we would want to enact, even if we did fully understand the issue of abuse. But we know that there's some abuse out there, too. There's a whole host of other issues as well. As far as labor force participation goes, West Virginia, is dead last among the entire population. We're dead last among the prime working age population. Another issue I want to mention is we're dead last among women. Female workforce participation is also lowest in West Virginia. And I do want to kind of give a shout out. We have this group called West Virginia Moving Women Forward that's actually really studied the issue of women in the workforce, and they focused a lot on what we can do to get more women in the workforce and to kind of change the landscape of the business landscape in West Virginia as far as women are concerned. And they've done a lot of good work in terms of helping us understand what we need to do. They've really showcased some facts around just the representation of women in leadership positions in West Virginia compared to the nation. If you look at, a few different measures of women in leadership positions, West Virginia is, very low among the states in terms of female representation. And I don't think that's good. I think it's a good thing that West Virginia women moving forward, I think it's good that they're highlighting these issues, but I think they've exposed more issues that we need to work on to create more diversity in the workplace and especially in leadership positions to help make West Virginia more prosperous over the long run. Move on to economic development priority number 2. Here I focus on kind of what you might think of as their traditional economic development areas of focus. We've been talking about downstream natural gas manufacturing for some time in West Virginia. I think this is still a really important issue, and I think we have, still really fantastic potential here as far as downstream natural gas manufacturing goes. As you all know, we have all this natural gas in West Virginia. Natural gas production in the state over the last decade has totally skyrocketed. And we know that producing raw natural gas and exporting raw natural gas to other states is a good thing. We know that creates income, it creates tax revenue, it creates jobs. But the fact of the matter is, exporting the raw natural gas doesn't do nearly as much to benefit our state as what we would see if we kept that raw natural gas in the state, broke it into its chemical components, and used it in dozens of industries kind of in the realm of chemicals and plastics manufacturing. We have so much potential there. It's slow going. It takes a long time to develop, but I think that potential is still on the horizon, and I think it's going to really boost West Virginia over the long run. We also have a lot of momentum in other manufacturing areas like aerospace manufacturing, for example. I think we have a lot of reasons to be optimistic in those realms. To a large extent, these areas, this is where we have to think about issues like good tax policy, like issues surrounding things like the inventory tax. This is where we have to think about marketing West Virginia and selling West Virginia to potential businesses all across the state or all across the country, all across the world. This is where we have to think about issues like being competitive in terms of tax incentives and other kind of competitive environment type elements. I mean, I know a lot of the folks in West Virginia, the Department of Commerce and the Department of Economic Development, who are doing really good work in the area of attracting these businesses and selling West Virginia to these businesses. But I think it's important to make sure that those teams have the resources they need to really have the manpower to market West Virginia and to sell West Virginia and to showcase the potential that we have. I know in some cases we're kind of outmatched just in terms of manpower if you compare West Virginia to bigger states like Ohio and Pennsylvania. So we have to make sure that we invest in resources in these areas so that we can really sell our state. Here's another opportunity that we have in West Virginia that really gets me excited. We have to think about, we can't just take the same strategy that everybody else takes, right? We have to figure out what is in West Virginia's comparative advantage. What do we have a special advantage in that other states can't just simply replicate? And this is an area that really gets me excited, rare earths. I'm sure you all have read about rare earths. You know how important rare earth elements are in all the electronics that we consume constantly. Rare earths are everywhere. Rare earths are critical in so many of these manufactured products nowadays. And you know as well that an overwhelming percentage of rare earth elements today come from China. Talk about 90% or more of rare earth elements that we see in the world today are produced or especially processed in China. We don't want that to be the case. We want to diversify. West Virginia has a great opportunity to go to our coal waste that we've been producing for over a century and extract rare earth elements and other critical minerals and carbon products from this coal waste. We have to make sure that we are supportive of efforts in this area. We have to make sure that we're supportive of entrepreneurship efforts. We know that we have things going on at the university to try to capitalize on this opportunity. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is a lot of people have to come together to support this, but this is a real fantastic and cool opportunity that West Virginia has a very rare and specific, unique advantage in. And this is also a win-win, because not only does this allow us a new opportunity to produce these valuable products, but it also helps clean up many of our coal waste sites at the same time. So it's a win-win as far as economic productivity as well as environmental cleanup or preserving environmental amenities. Another issue that I always want to talk about is the issue of thinking regionally. You all know that, we talk about the West Virginia economy all the time, like literally every day. Somebody asks me, how's the West Virginia economy doing? And the true answer is, there is no West Virginia economy. Our state is very diverse from region to region in terms of economic strengths and weaknesses and economic challenges and opportunities. We have tremendous diversity from the eastern panhandle down to the southwestern coal fields, all across the state. And it's so easy for us to kind of get together at a place like this and just think about what we need to do for West Virginia. But the fact of the matter is we don't ever want to lose sight of the idea that we have this tremendous diversity, and we need to make sure that we tailor economic development strategies appropriately to each of our region's specific strengths and weaknesses and challenges and opportunities, because they are so different, and what we need in the Potomac Highlands, for example, versus what we need in the Wheeling area versus what we need down in Mingo County, may be very different. And as far as the state goes, we have kind of one part of the state that has truly suffered a Great Depression over the last decade. We have a couple other parts of the state that have been in decline, but we have many counties in the state that have just kind of been stagnant, just moving sideways. And we also, by the same token, we have a couple parts of the state that have been doing exceptionally well and have great momentum in place that we can build on and expand that momentum to other parts of West Virginia, which I think is fantastic. As far as federal investment goes, wow, we are right now on the cusp of like a once-in-a-century opportunity to take federal dollars and invest those dollars in West Virginia. I've spent so much time lately trying to understand all the different ways in which we're going to be able to take federal dollars and invest those in our state. There's so many opportunities and so many programs out there that I can't even wrap my head around all those opportunities. I don't have too much to say about this other than the fact that it's a very rare opportunity that we have before us. But the point I want to make is, I heard one of my good friends mention this a while back. We just want to make sure that we don't have a bunch of really awesome, like, fireworks displays next July 4th. We want to make sure that we don't have a bunch of really awesome parades this fall or whatever. We want to make sure that we invest these dollars in West Virginia that will help boost productivity over the long run. We want to make sure that we don't spend these dollars on short-term goods that are fun and enjoyable in the short run, but that just go away in the long run. We have to make sure that we spend these dollars wisely for long-term investment to really boost productivity 5, 10, 20 years down the road. I think that should be a crucial piece of guidance as you go through evaluating how to invest these very rare dollars that are flowing into West Virginia. I have two more points to make. One point, many of you maybe heard me say this before, the issue around industrial diversification. And there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can show it, but the bottom line is that West Virginia we don't have the level of industrial diversification that we want. A diverse economy has multiple sectors that are doing well. If one sector suffers for some reason, you have other sectors that are still doing well that can pick up the slack that's left by the sector that is suffering for whatever reason. We have healthy levels of diversification in some parts of West Virginia, but overall the state needs more and more diversification. We need energy to be healthy. We want health in multiple areas of manufacturing. We want health in many other industries across the various sectors. The problem with this story is, to a large extent, we don't really know how to diversify. We don't want necessarily government picking winners and losers. We don't want government to choose industries A and B and to reject industries C and D. That's how the Soviets attempted to achieve industrial diversification decades ago. The real way to achieve industrial diversification is to support entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is the way to achieve the right industrial mix for your state over the long run. Entrepreneurship is messy. We know that many of the entrepreneurs that start up this year are not going to be in existence 5 or 10 years from now. But just think about it. You have a bunch of different entrepreneurs that take risks and try different things, try to go in different directions. Those entrepreneurs are supported by the overall economic landscape in the state. A lot of them do fail inevitably, but the entrepreneurs that do succeed ultimately find the right industrial mix for our state, just simply through the market mechanism. Making sure that West Virginia has an economic environment, a legal environment, and just an overall economic environment that's supportive of new business startup and growth is absolutely essential to our top economic development priority of diversifying our economy over the long run. I think we have actually made a lot of strides in recent years in terms of making our state more supportive of entrepreneurs, but we probably have more things that we can find that we can do to help support entrepreneurs further so that we can allow them to try different things. A lot of times I use the example of lavender farming. I don't know why I like this example, but a lot of times people come up and ask me, they say something like, in the southwestern coal fields, areas that, are reclaimed mine land, they ask me, do you think that lavender farming could be an industry that would work down there? And of course, my answer is, I have no idea. How would I know anything about that? I mean, I'm an economist who's a super nerd who sits in my office at WVU reading stuff. I don't know anything about lavender farming. How would I know that? My answer, though, is, I don't know, but if we can find an entrepreneur who's willing to take that risk and give it a try, then we should support him or her in every way that we can, and we should let the market figure out whether it will ultimately work for our state or not. So I'm going to close on what I think is the most exciting opportunity that we have here that's kind of a new opportunity. Outdoor recreation, remote work, and the state's overall image to outsiders. I mean, how much potential do we have for outdoor recreation in West Virginia? Just look at the natural amenities that we have in the state. I lived in Tennessee for 5 years, down in Knoxville, but close to Gatlinburg. Y'all, of course, been to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge and that whole area. And what a booming, booming tourist hub that is, and how much income that creates for Tennessee. And I look at that and I think, oh my God, West Virginia has at least as much potential as West Virginia has at least as much potential as Tennessee has to capitalize on these tourism opportunities. We have this enormous population center of Washington, D.C. that's so close, within driving distance, they could come here and enjoy West Virginia's fantastic outdoor amenities. We have so much that we can capitalize on. The fact that the New River Gorge, the reason I chose the New River Gorge picture specifically is because the fact that the New River Gorge was designated as a national park last December is such a strong thing that we can further leverage to boost tourism in West Virginia. I know that folks at the Department of Tourism have been doing great things to boost tourism already. I know that the numbers there are moving in the right direction. I'm excited about further enhancements in tourism over the long run as we continue to push to capitalize on this opportunity. And now that guy's a dorky guy, to say the least. I mean, he's like so happy to be at work. It's a pretty cheesy picture, but this is the best I could find in a short amount of time. But point is not the picture. The point is this concept of remote work. Brad Smith was talking about it yesterday. His talk got me very excited yesterday. We have all these people across the country that have the opportunity to work anywhere in the world. We can attract these people to West Virginia, enjoy the low cost of living that we have here. We can really leverage our outdoor assets to try to entice these people into West Virginia. We have this Ascend program at West Virginia University now, and in partnership with the Department of Tourism and other units across the state. The Brad and Elise Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative at WVU is doing amazing things to incentivize remote workers to come to West Virginia. We already are starting to see some really good results in terms of attracting remote workers to our state. I think this has the potential to really create positive momentum in many of our communities across West Virginia with just simply bringing remote workers. Enjoy the outdoor amenities, enjoy the low cost of living, and just keep your job in Chicago or New York or wherever. In my last photo, this is a fellow who works at WVU. Anybody care to guess where he's climbing? Did somebody actually say Seneca? Oh my God, I was just telling you how much I love you already this morning, and now I have to double down on that. Yeah, that's Seneca Rocks. This is a fellow who works at WVU, climbing Seneca Rocks, and how awesome is that? If you look at the people at the Brad and Elise Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative, Danny Twilley and Greg Corio and some other folks there have put together these amazing statistics that show how rock climbing opportunities, mountain biking opportunities, whitewater rafting opportunities in West Virginia far exceed those of anywhere else in the eastern U.S. And this gives us so much strength that we can leverage to bolster tourism, to bolster remote work, and to ultimately change the state's image. I mean, I actually personally am a hardcore hillbilly, and I kind of like the state's image of a hillbilly, but I know that that doesn't work for economic development. But imagine what we could do if we could change our state's image from that hillbilly who's, fill in the blank, to this. Imagine if this could become the new image of West Virginia, a hip place where young people can come and enjoy these outdoor amenities. And, we have so much potential. You get my point. We have so much that we can build on. And even though those long-term statistics aren't looking great yet, I think we have a lot to build on, and I'm pretty excited about West Virginia's future myself. I've rambled on. I don't think I have time for questions, but again, thank you all so much for having me. Well, he's telling me I can take one question, so I guess I'll give me an easy softball, not a hard one. Nobody? Over here?
John, are you doing anything to get this message into our schools so our kids can see what opportunities they have to them and to stay?
I personally mostly preach to groups like this. I mostly preach to people exactly like this audience. We're probably doing some things. Dean Hall, help me think about this after we get out of here. There's some more ways that we can get this message into the K-12 system. So I think that's a great idea that you have. All right. Thank you all so much. Really enjoyed seeing you and being here in person this year.
John, that was very well done. As he was making his remarks, I had a friend tell me years ago, he said, Steve, I want you to remember 3 words, and they were awareness, intentionality, and accountability. Awareness, knowing where you are, which I think is what John is telling us. Second is intentionality, what are you going to do about it? And third, accountability, hold yourself and others accountable. So I think it was a good message. We need to know where we are. I also let you know that the message delivered did not fall on deaf ears. I was down at the table discussing workforce participation with my wife, Beth. I suggested she may want to re-enter the workforce. I would like to catch a ride back to Charleston with somebody later on today. I would like to introduce to our next panel, or an introducer for our panel, and that is Kevin Craig. Kevin is the Executive Vice President of GP Natural Resource Partners and Western Pocahontas Properties. Kevin was a member of the West Virginia House of Delegates from 2001 to 2015 and is on numerous boards. Kevin is one of our very few legislators that holds a lifetime voting record of 100% with the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure to welcome Kevin Craig.
And I really appreciate it.
Don't make me look bad.
Okay. Well, good morning and welcome to everyone. Happy to have this next session, higher education and how the role it plays in economic development. So I think what you'll see is really a continuation of the discussions we just heard John have. And to help us along with that, to lead those discussions, we are all fortunate to have these strong leaders in our state. Certainly E. Gordon Gee, Jerome Gilbert, and Marty Roth, not only as leaders of their respective institutions, but leaders across our state and so many other efforts. So what we'd hope to do today, and it will involve your participation, because we really want to hear the questions from you to our leaders, what role higher education is playing in economic development. And I would encourage you to take time to read their respective biographies in your program. I won't go through each one, but you'll know by not only through the bio, but through their actions, what leadership they're providing for our state in the area of economic development. So I would like to kick it off with a question, and if all three can take a shot at answering, because I think it will help us bring together the collaboration of the higher education system in our state, is what role or do you see higher education playing in your respective institutions regarding talent development, talent acquisition by potential employers in West Virginia?
Well, they're all looking at me, you know. I don't know why that is. So anyway, first of all, let me just answer the question for John Deskin. You know, he's a nerd. He just hangs out there in his office and doesn't know. But the answer to that last question was the fact that we are heavily engaged in working with the K through 12 system. All of us are. Right. The Science Adventure School, which the university has started in the southern part of the state, is bringing young people to the Bechtel Summit. And our goal now through this process is to bring every sixth grader to the Summit or to Jackson's Mill and have them have an opportunity to experience all the things we're talking about. So I just wanted to make certain that everyone knew. And then the Educational Collaborative, of which we are all members, has been doing a great thing, a great deal of work in that regard. So economic development. I think that, first of all, I'm the president of a land-grant university. That's the reason Abraham Lincoln established us. You know, in 1862, no one had access to education, and he really came up with this notion that the people's universities ought to be created. And so, and the real purpose was to create communities through extension and 4-H and a variety of other things. And that has been the mission of the institution for the past 150 years. But saying that, some of the things we're trying to do is be very modern. You heard yesterday from our mutual colleague, Brad Smith, about Ascend West Virginia, about all of the things that we're doing in terms of attracting people here. One of the things that I think is interesting is the poll that recently came out, which showed that West Virginians have come to realize that we're not just an energy state, but we have a lot of other assets. And the poll said that they are willing to move around within the state to have economic opportunity, but they don't want to leave the state. And you know, my contention always has been that we export coal, oil, gas, and talent. And the greatest tragedy has been the exportation of talent. And now I think that the role of our three institutions and of higher education is to create the jobs, that create the opportunity for young people to stay here and make certain that that is happening. Yesterday we had a woman from Chicago who was one of the first people to move as part of our first cohort. She's already bought a house in Morgantown. She has a very high-paying job in the low 200,000s. She's bought a house. She's here. She has never been to West Virginia before, and she's moving here because she wanted to be part of what John Deskin was talking about.
You know, Marty and I were talking yesterday about the fact that half of your graduates, half of my graduates leave the state every year, and that we've got to figure out a way to connect them with opportunities. And one way is internships and co-ops. And we know that if we can get a student working for a company while they're still a student, the odds of them staying here are much greater than if they didn't have that experience. So we have ramped up our co-op and our internships, and I know that WVU has a strong effort in that arena as well as University of Charleston. But that is one way that we can get our students connected with industry, and then increase the chances of them staying in the state. In small states like West Virginia, the greatest concentration of talent and expertise and intellects is in the institutions of higher learning. We have a tremendous responsibility to make sure that we educate our students, but also contribute to the economic development of the state by encouraging those students to stay in the state. We employ a great number of individuals. Our impact just at Marshall is $500 million, and I think yours is like $2 or $3 billion,
Yeah, it's about,
Gordon.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things we need to understand is universities and colleges are the smokestack industry of the future. In other words, we are going to create the jobs because we're going to create the talent. And by the way, you know, among our three, we're the largest employer in the state, but that means that we can all grow. If we just grow based upon higher education, then what we're doing, we're kind of recycling ourselves. What we have to do is we have to create jobs that come from what we're doing in terms of all of those assets that we're providing.
And Gordon, I just calculated back of the envelope yesterday, with only half of our graduates staying in the state, we still add $60 million a year to the annual payrolls in the state with just half of our graduates. I would love for that to be $120 million every year, and I know yours is more than that, and Marty certainly has a contribution as well.
Certainly, and one of the things that's really key for us, you know, as Jerry mentioned, the importance of giving our students those applied experiential learning opportunities within your organizations so they're really prepared to add value when they join you. Before that happens, we are trying to have conversations with you so that we can prepare them in the classroom, in the labs, through the activities that we can manage on campus. So when they do step foot in your organizations, whether it's for an internship, a co-op, clinical rotation, whatever the case may be, they're going to be as productive as they can be, so they're adding value as quickly as possible to your organizations. And like we've all seen, when those students have those experiences, they really feel great about your organizations, working with your colleagues, adding value to your organizations, and that's the stickiness. That's what helps them want to stay here in West Virginia, in Huntington, in Morgantown, in Charleston, and really add value to the talent that you need in your organizations.
You know, I don't have the exact figures, but I'd be willing to bet that close to 90% of those students that co-op with a company, if offered the job, go ahead and work with that company. So if we can get them working in the state with industries in West Virginia, we have a fantastic opportunity to keep them.
So do you believe there's an opportunity to grow the number of
I can't believe you interrupted us. We were on a roll.
No, I think there is.
Who are you?
Really do think there is that opportunity.
Well, this conversation could go on for a long time. But what I'm hearing is the opportunities, and many in this room could help provide those co-ops or internships. So there's a partnership there to be had.
I think the other side of that, too, is that one of the advantages, again, of our size, agility. Let me just use that word, and we saw it from John, a variety of other things. You know, I've always thought about West Virginia as being a living learning center, a petri dish. You know, we can try things here, but we can be very agile. If you're the mayor of Los Angeles, it's just like whack-a-ball. You know, you never can solve any problem. So here we are. But the other side of it is that, for example, we were meeting with Dan Wright yesterday from Data Robot. They're moving here. Well, what they want to do is they want to hire a lot of people, but they need to have people in certain areas. And so I brought in Carolyn Long from our campus in Beckley, and she says, I'll create these programs tomorrow to train the people that will then be able to take the jobs. It's that kind of agility that we need to create.
And we're seeing that happen across a variety of disciplines. For example, Tech Connect has done a great job bringing all of our institutions together because we know how important cybersecurity is as an industry, how critical it is to our organizations, but it can also be a real economic driver in terms of a new industry vertical here in West Virginia. So each of our institutions is doing various things with regard to cybersecurity, some at the associate degree level, bachelor's, master's, and so forth. And we're leveraging the different assets that we have in our organizations. And I think the evolution of that is, how instead of working independently, can we operate in a more collaborative way so that West Virginia becomes the go-to location if you're looking for new talent or you need to develop talent in your organization around cybersecurity? And those discussions are happening across disciplines as well.
You know, I think COVID really shocked a lot of us and made us all realize how vulnerable we were in institutions of higher learning. And I think the byproduct of that is that many people realize that we need to collaborate more now than we ever did before, because we have strength in numbers and working together. And certainly we've worked with WVU, we've worked with Glenville State College, with Mount West Community College, and with University of Charleston now, West Virginia State. Working together, we have strength. Working together, we can do things we can't do by ourselves. Certainly, Gordon and I have worked in West Virginia Forward and other opportunities like the Virgin Hyperloop. We're talking about App Harvest coming in as a producer of produce. Lots of opportunities, and I think higher education has to be willing to adapt. You know, you talked about agility, Gordon. I think we as institutions of higher learning need to be able to adapt, and we have in West Virginia, probably more so than many other states.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, and I think that it's important for the audience to know this. We actually like each other.
We
Maybe
do.
not on a Saturday
We do.
afternoon.
People don't think that Gordon and I like each other,
I
but
know.
we really do.
Yeah,
That's why they put me in the middle.
yeah. That's the reason we put you in the middle. We're going to crush you. But anyway,
He's always got a little side comment, doesn't he?
but the whole point is the fact that I think, and I give great accolades to Jerry, Dr. Gilbert, and I'm very sorry that we're going to be losing him from the state because he's been such a great asset. But I just want everyone to know that we have had the greatest collaboration, Jerry.
We have.
It has been so wonderful to see, and so therefore we've got Hyperloop, we've got a data robot, we've got all these other things. The economic development side of universities has been really the bright spot in terms of many of the things that are happening right now.
Well, and you know, we're an asset, and that's what both Gordon and I, we went to the Senate Finance Committee this past spring, and we said, you know, we are an asset for the state. Use us. We want to help the state develop its economic development. We can be your assets. People want to go and live in university towns. They want to be associated with universities. We want to help.
And it's really impressive how much external support as well as legislative support that we have here in the state. So John Chambers really helping to drive innovation through WVU. Brad Smith doing the same thing at Marshall, the Worleys doing the same thing at UC. So as we've heard so much throughout the summit about how important it is that we be able to attract individuals to come to West Virginia, that we attract new businesses to come to West Virginia, all of our universities play a role by helping to support innovation. Innovations coming off of our campuses, but innovation centers that can provide co-working spaces, remote working spaces, incubators, accelerators, and so forth. And it's really terrific that there's such great vision here in the state and individuals willing to help us in supporting those efforts.
Let's go ahead and open up for questions from the audience. Since I promised we wanted their participation. Is there a question from our audience? Anything?
Since there's no question.
Jerry, go
I was
ahead.
going to say that the one thing that John Chambers and Brad Smith did for WVU and Marshall, it spurred us on to take the entrepreneurship activities that we were doing and take them to a higher level. We're trying to get every freshman trained with an entrepreneurship class so that they have that entrepreneurship spirit, that they realize that they themselves can start a business in West Virginia and do what they may dream of doing right here at home. And I think it's an attitudinal change. And we talked about going to K through 12, creating that pride that you can do it here. You don't have to go somewhere else to do it. And I think that's what Brad is helping us with that message, that we have a tremendous pride in this state and we should be able to do it right here, and we can do it right here. And I think that's their take-home message.
You know, I think it's really interesting to think about West Virginians who've gone on to have great success. but yet how much they are devoted to this state. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. Most times when people leave a state where I have been, they say, thank goodness, I'm leaving. But here, the devotion, you saw Brad yesterday, but
right.
I can tell you, John Chambers was on the telephone with us twice yesterday, just talking about some of the things that we're trying to get through the Congress for West Virginia. It's just, it's really a wonderful thing. And of course, the Worleys are prime examples. They have really devoted their lives to West Virginia.
I read a lot of Southern literature. I'm from Mississippi. And what the Southern writers say is that the South, and I'd say West Virginia is Southern. Now,
we're
some
south
people
of the
will argue,
Mason-Dixon
but
line, right?
that it's really about the place. And Southerners have a strong sense of place. And I think that Mississippi and West Virginia are very much alike in that the people feel connected to the land, to the space. And that is a very strong urging that brings people back, and it keeps people there. And I think we need to play on that in terms of our recreation, our tourism. The space and the place is special.
Yeah, the marijuana laws are not quite in effect yet, so you'll think I've been up in my room doing something. But I think that
that's Vanderbilt, right?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. You don't need to remind me.
We're great friends, we like to kid each other.
He's in his cruel streak today. But anyway, I know that people think that I'm crazy when I say this, but I think that the greatest gift to West Virginia will have been the pandemic. And the reason for that is the fact that people have realized that living in vertical cities is not what they want to do. Secondly of all, the millennials and now the Z generation that we're training, they really want to be engaged in communities. They want to have good lives. They want to have outdoor recreation. They want to have climbing walls and all these other kinds of things. And West Virginia is absolutely going to benefit tremendously from that, and we're already seeing it. And so so some places are going to lose. The pandemic is not good for any of us, but for West Virginia, I think it's going to be a real economic opportunity that we need to take advantage of.
I was telling Marty yesterday at lunch that during the pandemic,
you guys had lunch without me. Thank you.
Yes, we did. Actually, we had planned that long in advance. But anyway, I was telling Marty that during the pandemic, my daughter and her husband were in D.C., and they were shut down up there. And they had this dog that they couldn't walk on the streets. So they spent a month with us in May, and they went to Charleston and started looking at houses. They now live in Charleston. They don't ever plan to leave Charleston, West Virginia. They love it here. They worked remotely. And now they're both got jobs that they can both work in Charleston, and they love West Virginia.
That's a great example.
And I think another impact that the pandemic has had is we've seen a lot of growth in distance learning. Just as we're doing remote work, people are doing remote learning. And all of our institutions were already doing some of that. But for the fall semester that just began, for the first time, we have more students engaged with us online than we do in seat on our campuses in Charleston and Beckley. So it was fortuitous for us to have gotten into the online space almost a decade ago, so we're able to kind of leverage that growth. But I think the point is it's kind of changing the way a lot of people think about how do I want to receive my education and what type of education do I want to receive. Our whole discussion has really kind of focused on talent and career preparation and so forth, and that's more and more the mindset of the way people want to engage in continuous learning. Certainly, there'll continue to be a market for the degrees that we've traditionally earned, and we're all thinking innovatively about what new degrees should we think about offering that can help your organizations with the talent that you need and enable those individuals to get great jobs. But we're starting to finally see some growth with regard to people that just want a piece of information that may be a certificate or a particular body of knowledge that enables them to move from one job to another within an organization or perhaps across organizations. So I think the pandemic has accelerated the type of educational programs that we deliver, as well as the modalities through which we're going to be offering them.
And talking about programs you offer now, are there new programs that have been created either as a result of the pandemic or?
Sure, absolutely, and a great presentation today at Data Robot. So at UC, as well as I know at pretty much most institutions throughout the state, we've ramped up new programs in data analytics, business analytics. We have new programs in applied computer science, cybersecurity, as well as additional healthcare programs to try to address the real talent needs that we have here in the state of West Virginia, and I'm sure Gordon and Jerry can talk about the new programs they've launched.
And Jerry has a number of really new programs, and so do we. And I think one of the things that at least I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what are the comparative advantages of West Virginia and of our university. You heard Dr. Razai yesterday. I mean, we're really a wonderful leader in terms of neuroscience. So let's create brain institutes. Let's think about and let's think about the application of that. A lot of the things that we're doing right now, by the way, and I'll say this, everyone, we're really moving much more to the applied. It's great for us to have programs and projects that are written up in magazines. The real important thing is to have those programs and projects creating jobs, and that notion I think is important. The other thing is we're all working to what I call stackable degrees. You know, not everyone needs to come to our institution, but everyone needs to continue education. And so for us to be able to certify, if someone is in the Army and they get a certain type of certificate to build on that, so that they can then grow their educational programming. And I think that those stackable degrees are something that are going to be very important over the next period of time.
Kevin, we just rolled out during the pandemic a Doctor of Business Administration, totally online, where students from all over the country can get a doctorate in business at Marshall, and had a tremendous first class coming in. We also just are going to start in the spring a program with Mount West Community and Technical College, an associate's degree in aircraft maintenance technology. We've already had a company, Thoroughbred Aviation, has located at Tri-State Airport because of our degree program. So we're already attracting businesses as a result. We just opened probably the premier aviation school in the country, the Bill No Flight School at Yeager Airport. We are so proud to be in Charleston and to fly the green flag, the Marshall flag in Charleston, along with your flag and Gordon's as well.
And by the way, I think we need some maroon and blue chairs up here. Just saying.
Green
I
is
was
always
offended by all
popular,
the
right?
green. I want you to know that. So.
You can tell we're coming up on our time limit. But any questions for our panel? We have one over here. Great. Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
My question is about tech transfer. So one of the things that we study at the level of state policy is how cities like Lexington and Columbus and some of the what we consider the startup hubs around the country have been successful in transferring the technology from the campus to the corporate community. And I know that all of you in one level or another are involved in that. What do you need us to do to help? What do you need us to do to incentivize tech transfer more, whether that's helping bring the venture capital to the state or free up the university's capacity to commercialize R&D? What do you need us to do?
Go ahead, Gordon.
Okay, well, I'm going, Mr. Speaker, thanks for that question. First of all, at West Virginia University, we've created this program called Vantage Ventures, which is really about attracting startup programs here to the state. It's been very successful, and we now have, in addition to the ones we already have there, we have 7 in line. And I think that from the legislative point of view, what we need to do is we need to have something you've started, an investment strategy, a way for us to take state dollars and escalate them into attracting people here, but more importantly, to make certain that we are investing in the kinds of programs that create startup mentalities. And I think that all of us are really starting those kind of programs or being very successful at those. And I think that that's one of the things that I would suggest to the Speaker.
And certainly, Gordon and I both would love to see our funding restored from last session. I think supporting higher education and showing that you are committed to higher education and realize that it's an asset, I think that sends a great message to those tech firms that say, if higher education is valued in West Virginia, then they're going to value the sorts of things that we value as a company. We're all about fintech. We're all about cybersecurity. We want to create those graduates that can connect with those companies, attract them here, and have a steady supply of graduates for those companies when they locate in West Virginia.
And I think we're all doing a variety of great things with regard to helping our students think about starting a business. But starting a business is one thing, scaling it up and helping it grow and really become sustainable and reach a level where it's employing multiple people, really generating a lot of tax revenue for the municipality, for the state, and so forth, is in some ways kind of the missing piece. So, kudos to the great work that are being done at WVU and Marshall, helping organizations do just that in Morgantown and Huntington. We're looking to do the same thing in Charleston. So we have a great innovation center on our campus. We have got some EDA funding, feasibility study, and now we're looking to expand our footprint into downtown Charleston with a innovation hub. So great support from Senator Capito, Senator Manchin, in helping us really take advantage of this moment in time where there's some significant federal stimulus funding that is flowing into the state, it's flowing into the city, flowing into the county, and we're really looking forward to some additional EDA and matching funding to be able to provide those types of scale-up resources for businesses that will achieve, hopefully, Speaker, exactly what you described, is bringing some great ideas that are coming out of our universities and providing them with the support so that they can become thriving enterprises.
Great. We have time for one more question. Anyone? Okay. If not, thanks to the three of you for your sharing your thoughts and ideas with all of us today, and certainly for your leadership and collaboration, all your efforts to help move West Virginia forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin, Dr. Gee, Dr. Gilbert, and Dr. Roth. Turn the state around and keep in the right direction. It is so important to rely on our education system. So thank you very much for your remarks. I've been given a note to remind people to turn in your exhibitor cards where you've been stamped going around to various exhibition booths. They are going to be drawing names very soon, so if you would get those out to the chamber desk out in the hallway, that'd be great, because right now your odds of winning are very good. It's now my privilege to welcome back a familiar face to the Business Summit. Chris Stirewalt is a longtime political analyst and a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he focuses on American politics, voting trends, public opinion, and media. He's concurrently a contributing editor and weekly columnist for The Dispatch. He was previously the political editor on the Fox News channel, where he helped to coordinate political coverage across the network and specialize in or on-air analysis of polls and voting trends. Chris is a native of Wheeling and started out his career with the Wheeling Intelligencer, the Charleston Daily Mail, and West Virginia Media. Chris, it's always nice to have you with us. welcome home and to the Business Summit.
Symbolic hand, fist bump only. Fist bump only, please. I love West Virginians. We're fist bump only, but we're kissing each other on the cheeks and hugging like we're at a tent revival because that's how we do it. That's good. If I would have known how nice everybody was going to be and all the things that I would get invited to go do, I would have gotten fired years ago. This is really the best thing. Of course, if any of my former employers in West Virginia are here, they would say I was probably closer than I knew. The single most transgressive, I'm a big fan of having unpopular opinions, but the single most transgressive, radical thing that you could probably say in American politics or public life today is that this is the best time and the best place to be a human being alive in the world in all of our history. We are living in an era of peace. We are living in an era of prosperity. We are living in an era of opportunity. We are living in an era of equality unmatched in our history. Not just our history, but the history of the world. So why is everybody so damn miserable? Why is everybody yelling at each other all the time? We remember, some of us remember, what James Carville said in 1992 about the Bush-Clinton campaign. And he said, it's the economy, stupid. Well, if that's true, if you have 4 or 5% annualized GDP growth and you're just barreling money through the doors, then we should be happy. We should be content. We should like each other. And yet, we do not. We are unhappy. We are disconsolate. We are crabby. We yell at each other. And why, right? So we want to know why. And well, actually, I have to remember to start my timer or I will never shut up. The chair can rule me out of order, Mr. Speaker. But here's what we're not doing. Is Evan Jenkins here right now? Is Chief Justice Jenkins here? No, he's still there. He's trying to sneak out the back. So I watched him go to all 55 counties, to all 55 courthouses in West Virginia. I watched him do it on Instagram over the course of this year. Now, that's not ideological work, right? That doesn't change the politics. It's not even policy work, right? But it's important work, right? We have politicians. I'm looking at Senator Capito right here. We could say the same thing about Senator Manchin. We could say the same thing about, I saw David McKinley here. There's a number of people we could say this about who take seriously an important job of being a public official, right? That being a politician, look, I have made a career out of saying terrible things about politicians. I love it. I am literally always first in line to say it. But I'm also here to be the one to say we have perniciously, terribly weak institutions that people have very low confidence in. And I don't blame them for having that low confidence because we don't have enough Evan Jenkins, we don't have enough Shelley Capitos, we don't have enough people who treat the job with respect, who treat the job as something important to do that is real public service. Every county clerk that Evan Jenkins went and shook the hand of, every person who Shelley Capito goes and sees when she goes across the state, all of those interactions, this event, this convening event, and I want to make sure I thank both Steves, all Steves, for the chance to be here. This is not usual in America, to have an event that convenes in a bipartisan fashion. Of course, it's easy in West Virginia. There's one party, they just change labels, it's okay. But you just switch your tag as you come in. To have a convening organization like the State Chamber, to have an event like this that brings people together seriously, not taking themselves seriously, but taking their work seriously, to come here and do this is abnormal now, right? This is the exception, not the rule. We used to be a country of Rotarians and Elks and the Loyal Order of the Water Buffalo. We all went to church or mosque or synagogue every week. We were plugged in to communities, and we were building strong institutions that could act as mediating forces against the crazy, radical goofballs who will always be crazy, radical goofballs. There is a reason that we have a Bill of Rights. There is a reason that we have a Constitution arranged the way that it is. And it is around a fundamental idea that human beings have a nature, that people are a way. And I don't want to give away the ending. Spoiler alert, that nature ain't that good, right? We got problems. Human beings tend to be venal. We tend to be selfish. We tend to be greedy. We tend to be retributive. We tend to seek power for power's own sake. So we developed a system of government that we can call Americanism. It divides power so that no individual can have too much. You split it across 3 branches. You chop it up that way. And then you chop it up into 50 states, and you have states pitted against the feds. You have local pitted against the states. You have Congress pitted against the presidential. You have the judicial as the referee coming in and sometimes getting a couple of punches in on its own as it comes through. You have divided power. Mr. Madison said that ambition must be made to counteract ambition. It will not work if the institutions are not good, period. Without good institutions, it will not work. So we hear, well, the reason we're having all of this populist idiocy, the reason that people are yelling in everybody's face is because the institutions have failed. And I tell them the bad news. The institutions are us. It is us. Somebody has to go do that job. Somebody has to go to those courthouses. Somebody has to convene this meeting and go here and do it. And I'm going to say something that I would seldom say, but it is this. Hats off to the politicians who take their job seriously, who care about their work, get up in the morning, put on their suit, comb their hair, shave their face, and go out and do it. That's hard work. I'm serious. It's hard work to do, and we treat them like crap for doing it. Now, a little of that is good, right? I'm not giving it all away. We got to keep them humble, and we have to keep them accountable, and we have to make sure that they are not serving themselves over serving their constituents and serving their interests. But we have to go back to an understanding that public service is virtuous and is, in fact, a good thing, because we can't keep going on. Anybody who has watched Washington, D.C. in the last 20 years is aware that we have a bipartisan problem. We are not sending our best, right? Neither party is sending its best. These are not the best people. You would not let most of the members of the United States Congress house sit for you or water your plants. They'd burn the place down. The cat would starve to death. It would be a bad situation. And they'd hold a press conference in your front lawn blaming you for the problem that you didn't have the right kind of organic cat food. When I got canned, I saw this strange outpouring of, oh, the heroic, the this, the that. International news crews came and interviewed me and all of this stuff. One guy said that I reminded him of a Soviet Air Force general during the Cold War who refused to follow an order that prevented thermonuclear war. And I said, well, I am a commie in this story, but I'll take it. Okay, that's fine. That's very, very nice of you to say. But I found the whole thing rather befuddling, because I didn't do anything differently than I was supposed to do and have been trained to do since Bob Kelly was pulling me by the ear into his office at the Wheeling Intelligencer when I was 17 years old. It's all the same stuff. It's just do your job. So I'm a big individualist. Well, there's no heroism in doing your job. And quite frankly, I would be too afraid to lie about the results because I'd be sweating it the whole way. The doing your job, much like what I said about how lucky we are to be alive where we are when we are, doing your job is just, that's literally the price of admission. That's the baseline to get in and do your work. But a lot of people see their job as a platform. right? We talk about platforming a lot now. We talk about you're platformed, you're deplatformed, you're this, you're that, whatever. What do you do with a platform? You stand on, I'm standing on a platform. I literally physically have a platform. And in this case, I was asked to come and talk to you from it. This is supposed to be unusual. I mean, everything I do is a little unusual, but this is supposed to be unusual, that people get up here and have a platform to go talk to you. Most of the work that we are supposed to do in public life in America is not about standing up on top of a platform and talking. Most of the work that we're supposed to do in public life in America involves working with each other for no glory, behind the scenes, hammering out a deal, getting the stuff done. So what happens when, and a lot of this is social media, a lot of this is our broken, terrible national news media, but what happens when people look at, let's say, service in Congress? Let's take getting elected to the House of Representatives. I don't know that there are any members of Congress here right now, but I will, if they are, I will break the bad. Oh, okay, we got one right there. You know. So Carol Miller knows. 1 of 435 ain't much. And I don't mean that in a negative, but it's like you're there, you're part of it, one organ humming away doing this work, right? That's your job, is to find a place to fit in and get in that space, to learn how to do it, get on the right committee, move ahead, and advance the stuff that you want. We've watched the Republicans in West Virginia since they took over. Talk about the dog who caught the car. They took over in the West Virginia legislature, and they didn't know what to do for a minute. And then they have figured out, and we've seen impressive legislation on school choice move through. We've seen Republicans figuring out, how do we govern? Okay, we're going to have to do this. Being in the minority is fun, right? And if you spend 85 years in the minority, you really get good at it, right? You really develop a skill for a minority status. Governing is hard. Most of what you do when you govern will not, most of what you do will not get noticed. Most of the good things you do will not get noticed. Everything that you do will be subject to criticism by somebody. And it's large, if you're doing it right, it's largely thankless work, right? It's largely, we glorify politicians, they stand up, they run campaign ads, they're famous. But if they're doing it right, most of the work that they're doing is service. Most of the work that they're doing is behind closed doors, and they're making it happen, and they're playing their part. But what happens if you got to Congress and you were, let's say, I don't know, a congresswoman who went by 3 initials from New York? Let's just say. Or let's say you were a congressman from Florida who had maybe Venmo'd some 17-year-olds some money or not, we're not sure. But you get to Congress, and what's Congress for you? It's a platform for you to stand on top of and be famous. We have a parliament of pundits who want to go on television and have opinions about things, but they don't want to do it. They don't want to do their job because when you do your job, it's unpopular, it's hard work, and they don't like it. Roger Hanshaw is back there, and I said to him last night, what I like about you is you like your work, but you don't want your job. That's kind of perfect. This is kind of the perfect thing. He's good at what he does. He wants to spend his time making the House work. He wants to do all those things. But the other part of it, the platforming, standing up here telling you how important and wonderful he is, I don't think he's really that hot in. And that's okay. That's what we need. We need more of those. We need more people who think and act like that. So if you see this as a platform, you're not going to want to do your work. If you primarily see your public service as a platform, you're not going to want to do your work. Imagine how insane this statement is. And this is all true. As they would say in Beckley, this is actually true. The President of the Supreme Court of the United States said of an eviction moratorium, a totally unconstitutional, crazy cakes, the idea that the health department of the United States has the power to govern the financial transactions of individuals across the country, pretty crazy to begin with. But what the Supreme Court said about the eviction moratorium was, well, it's about to wrap up anyway. It was a moment that we were kind of in, and we're going to let it slide because it's about to expire. And Biden said, well, Congress ought to extend this. That's what I think, is that Congress ought to do it. And Nancy Pelosi said, oh, no, no, no. Après vous, Gaston. You go first. We want you to do it. We talked to each other, and we decided that we did not want to do that. In their decision, the Supreme Court had said, We don't know whether this is constitutional or not, but it would be if Congress did it. If Congress passed a bill saying that that was true, we would have to respect that bill. And that would range from Clarence Thomas to Sonia Sotomayor would all say, yep, if Congress passed this legislation duly and properly through the system, and it was signed into law by the president, then we'd have to say that it was good. But this I don't think we can say is good. So Biden says Congress should do it. Congress says, we talked, we just want you to do it. Biden says, I can't do this because it's unconstitutional. And then, like, 3 days later, he went, screw it, we're doing it, let's just go for it. What? So, starting with this, now we'll go into ancient history. When George W. Bush signed the McCain-Feingold Campaign Finance Reform Act, probably the single worst piece of legislation of my adult life that the Congress has passed. A true stinker, a real disaster. And, of course, it was very popular. And George W. Bush signed it, and he put a note on it that said, I think this is unconstitutional and that the courts will reverse it, but I'm going to sign it anyway because that's what people seem to want. What? You can't say that. You're the president. You have just as much of a job to stand up for the Constitution. Your oath is not to be nice to the people or be a Republican or wear blue socks. Your oath is to what? The Constitution. And you say, I don't think this is constitutional, I'm going to sign it anyway. That's a bad sign. Then Barack Obama becomes president. Barack Obama says, I can't just say who gets to stay in the country and who gets deported. I can't protect these dreamers. I'm not a king. And then he said, well, the election's coming up. Maybe I am. I'm just going to do it anyway. And Congress said, we don't think this is very good. We're very cross with you, but thank you for not making us work. Thank you for not making us do our job. So then there was the orange guy who was elected after Obama. And then he says, I want you to build a wall. I want you to give me money to build a wall at the southern border. And 7 times he asked. And 7 times said nay, the Congress, nay, thou shalt not have a group of steel slats to form a big, beautiful wall on the southern border of these United States. They set it under Republican control and they set it under Democratic control. And then you know what the president said? Well, you probably can't do anything to the defense budget, so I'm going to take money out of the defense budget and spend it where you told me not to. And Congress said, we're a little upset about it, but we don't want to do anything because it could be bad, so we're a strong letter to follow. Strong letter to follow. And then Joe Biden gets elected president and does what we just talked about and says, here's a thing that is unconstitutional. I wish for the Congress to do it so that it would be constitutional, but the Congress said it's not a good time. So I'm just going to do it anyway. And sooner or later, the Supreme Court, the adult in the room, will come in and say, no, you may not. And we'll all say to our voters, oh, we tried to give you everything you wanted. We tried to make all of your hopes and dreams come true. But those mean old justices on the Supreme Court, they wouldn't let us have it. What is the story that we're talking about? People not wanting to do their jobs because their jobs are hard and it makes them unpopular and they might lose and they might not get to stay. The number one thing they all want, well, no, the number one thing the bad ones want is to stay no matter what. To stay no matter what. Until the earth again cools into a cinder and falls into the sun. Let them stay in their job. And can you imagine any sane person who serves in Congress who loves it and thinks that it's wonderful is not sane, right? The sane people I know are frustrated by the work. They're frustrated by the system. They're frustrated by the process. And they should be. That's correct because it's not working the way it's supposed to be. Our founders had a moral imagination, an understanding of human nature that maybe Shakespeare, a handful of people in human history have fully grasped what human nature is like. And their understanding of making ambition meet ambition and doing that was what created Americanism. It created the American system. Did you know that there were no isms in America until about the turn of the last century? So for the first 150, 200 years of American life, or for the first 150 years of American life, there was disagreement about who would get what, where, and when. Will I get the road? Will you get the dam? There was a civil war we had that wasn't super popular. But the fight was within our constitutional order because Americans were proud of having devised the best system for resolving disputes of any people in history. We still do have it, but we are not proud of it anymore, and we do not use it anymore. The American system, it's not progressive, it's not conservative, it's not those things. It's a way to resolve disputes, to come together and use the convening power of a legislature and of an executive branch to resolve these disputes. That's all it is. It's not something else. It's that simple that they have to come together and do it. But it requires people of good faith and goodwill to be in that space to do the work. What our founders' moral imagination did not reach, unfortunately, would be that there would be a time that one branch of government would not want power. Their assumption was that the executive and the legislative branch and the judicial branch would be fighting over power, fighting over power, fighting over power. We have a Congress that doesn't want to be Congress, and it's no good. It is no good for our country. Whatever else comes out of the fights over the filibuster, and my God, keep the filibuster. Holy crocono. Coming out, you know you're in a nerdy room when that's an applause line. Keeping the filibuster and the discussion all around this is part of a bigger conversation. How do we turn Congress from being a platform for people who just want to get reelected for the rest of their lives and not do anything, right? We have a Congress that doesn't want to use its war power. How would the framers have perceived a Congress that didn't want the power to declare war? You do it. We don't want it. This is too much. How would they perceive a Congress that ceded all of its much of its rulemaking and appropriations power to the executive branch? And they did it because it's the easier way to stay in office, right? And that's all you do. And it takes so much work now to be a good member. You have to know so much. You have to try so hard because the current is carrying you toward what? Doing nothing. The current wants to carry you right down the river to just go along, be quiet, and hopefully this stuff will go away. So our work together, whether we are Democrats or Republicans, liberals or conservatives, whether we're from the real West Virginia in Wheeling or the Kanawha Valley, wherever we are from in the great state, the 35th star, wherever we are as Americans, we have one job right now. And it's not about the blue team winning or the red team winning. Certainly not. That is not our biggest problem. Because as we have seen, when they get in power, all right, just 2 seconds more. All right, just hold on. I'll stop then. Once they get in power, Potomac fever sets in real quick. It's hard to fight, right? Senator Capito has to take quinine pills every day just to keep the malaria of Washington from afflicting her because it's there, right? And it's easy to fall into the trap. How do we turn Congress and public service not a platform on which roosters can get on top of it to crow, but to be a power and a force that people want to serve and be a part of? How do we get this back to be an institution? And the truth is, most of all, that what we in this room have to say and do about that is that when a politician comes along and tells you that they're going to give you everything you ever wanted and make all of your dreams come true, you know that's not true. And when a politician comes along and says, as was the case in 2016, the Republicans said that Hillary Clinton was like the terrorist who was going to fly an airplane into the Capitol. And Hillary Clinton said that Donald Trump was going to cause a global thermonuclear war if he was elected. So all Donald Trump had to do to be successful was not end life on Earth. So the bar is too low. It's too low. So when the politician tells you, I will make everything happen, they don't say that very much anymore because they might have to deliver. We already know that's bogus. But the other one that's bogus is when they tell you, if that other guy gets in, right? If that other guy gets in, if that other gal gets in, life as we know it is over. America is dangling by a thread. It could be all over. It's not. We won't. We are strong. We are resilient. We are capable. We are able, and we are doing a great job. I don't want to live any place in the world other than the United States of America. I don't want any system of government other than the American system. So when they tell you that we're almost dead and that it's almost over and it's almost fallen, that is a lie that is designed to keep you from asking too much of them, to keep you from asking them to do their job. So don't believe it when they tell you that. Can we just agree on that? The next time that they say, oh, we're dangling by a thread, say, I don't know. I kind of like America. I'm kind of optimistic and bullish on our future. The optimism that yes, for America, I think we should applaud America. That's always good. Gratitude is the beginning of all good things in human existence. Being grateful, having a grateful heart for what we have, allows us to be hopeful. When we are grateful for how wonderful it is to be alive in this place and at this time and to be an American, it allows us then to be hopeful about the future. And if we're hopeful about the future, we will not be easy pickings for demagogues and jerks and weirdos who want to come by and manipulate our system and turn it into a platform for them instead of a vehicle for service for us. And that's all I got to say about that. Who's got a question for me? Somebody's got a question. Bill Bissett, of course, has a question. Which of your 9 jobs, what role are you in right now?
At this very
At
moment?
this moment.
Or, at Huntington Regional Chamber
Okay,
President,
all right,
I
all
think. Chris, great presentation, like always. Thanks for that. Also, you may have heard we're redistricting soon.
It's the single
congressional levels.
Congressional redistricting is the single most important political issue in front of the state of West Virginia right now by a pretty wide margin.
I thought you might talk about it.
I'm worried about redistricting in West Virginia because I think it's going to turn it into a poor district and a rich district, and I think that a north-south split on the state is a bad idea. And I'm concerned that you end up with a north-south district. I think you need basically an east-west district. I would cut the state well, I'm going to make the hand gesture, but don't take any pictures of me while I'm doing it. But if that's the state, I'm going to go from right there, and I'd have one district that was Wheeling, Parkersburg, Ripley, Charleston, Morgantown, and I'd have one district that was the Eastern Panhandle, Beckley, and Huntington. And those are 2 good districts, because here's the thing. If you have a fast-growing district with higher educational attainment levels and higher income levels, and you have one that is shrinking with lower educational and lower income levels, the disparity will widen over time. This is not a discussion to be had about the current members of Congress. This is a discussion that will shape the next 20 years of how West Virginians see themselves and how they see each other. This is way more than this one or that one. This is a big deal because West Virginia is a very political state. It is a more political, like you go out to California, they're not even sure if there's an election in a year. In West Virginia, people are like, well, we're really sweating out that county commission race down in Upshur. And you're like, oh, okay, well, you're paying attention. But I know that I'm right, obviously, because I'm on television. So it just must be true. However the districts are drawn, they should be drawn with an attitude that says we want balanced districts that are both strong, that are both growing, that are both vibrant for the future, right? And putting the Eastern Panhandle with Southern West Virginia will help do that. And that's what I think, but thank you for your question. Would you like to ask a question from any of your other jobs? Okay, we'll stay. The chair, he'd like to reserve the remainder of his time, if that's okay. Does anybody else have a question? Yes, ma'am. Well, yes, of course.
Give us your perspective on Trump's influence in the 2022 and 2024 elections.
Well, maybe I'll put it like this. We always want to believe that the moment that we live in is different, worse, better, crazier than ever it has been before. It's boring to say, well, you know, what's the line in the Christmas song? We'll have to muddle through somehow. That's how actually we always are doing it, right? We're always facing new sets of challenges that we did not prepare for, because if we had prepared for them, they wouldn't be challenges. And we get surprised and things go south on us. And the reality is Donald Trump is one in a row. He's totally different than other politicians, but he's not. I wrote a whole book about this. He is part of a long tradition of American populist leaders who figure out how to get people riled up and fired up. He has a good ear for the room. He knows what people want to hear, or more importantly, what they don't want to hear, and he knows how to do it. Donald Trump in the Republican Party has to get to a point where its members are okay with Donald Trump, whatever he's going to do. Whatever he's going to go do, he may do a lot, he may do a little. I don't think that he has the discipline to do what would be necessary for what his advisors want. We saw a primary down in Texas where Trump came in and heavy-backed the congressman's widow. It was a special election to replace a congressman who had passed away, and came in heavy and backed him, and she lost. And it wasn't that close. And the endorsement didn't really matter. The Trump endorsement didn't really matter. When they asked Republicans about Donald Trump, when pollsters ask Republicans about Donald Trump, they are defensive of their man, right? He is their guy. And when you say, what do you think of Donald Trump? I like Donald Trump. And I know why you're asking me that, because you're a jerk. And you're one of these pinko liberals from the New York Times who's calling me up to get me to say something bad about Donald Trump, and I'm not going to do it. So part of it is defensiveness. And they're also defensive because after January 6th, they were embarrassed, right? That was an embarrassing day for Republicans. And I know why they don't want to talk about it. I wouldn't want to talk about it either. It was an embarrassing day. So that added to the defensiveness around Trump. But being defensive for Trump and about Trump is not the same as him being able to deliver political outcomes. We will see in 2022, here's what will happen as a result of 2022. Wait, I'll do it. I'm going to take an even lazier shortcut. In 2018, Democrats did better in congressional elections than they had ever done in a midterm before. They won like 41 seats. It was a big deal. And the received wisdom, fueled by weirdos on Twitter and the national press, was that democratic socialism and the radical left had arrived and was the driving force within the Democratic Party. And I looked at the results and I was like, actually what the driving force in the Democratic Party was moderates in suburban districts who ran against Trump and then said they wouldn't do anything else. That was the driving force. But the received wisdom among Democrats was that Bernie Sanders was the future. They basically should have had the fire marshal come in to break up Bernie Sanders' announcement of his Medicare for All legislation because so many presidential candidates had crowded into the room to say, I too stand with Brother Sanders for the workers' paradise of the future. Kamala Harris, Kristen Gillibrand, all of these more normal people believed. They were very online. They spent too much time on Twitter. Their advisors spent too much time on Twitter and watching cable news, and they believed that radical left was the future. So when they all got to run for president, they all lined up over here. Over here. They all lined up on the far left, and the lane was too crowded. And here's old Joe Biden. They brought him out of the pasture and shoved him into one of the stalls. And people said, this old nag will never run, never make it around the track. There's no way. And you know what? He knew more about what the Democratic electorate was like than they did. Democratic electorate wasn't radical. They wanted to beat Trump first and foremost. And they were not interested in radical ideas, radicalism, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, all of the stuff that we were told that they were into. Instead, they were into the kind of moderate corporate Democrat from Delaware. The Republican, the most significant factor for 2024 is going to be, what do Republicans think happened in 2022? Now, they'll be wrong, but what they think happened will determine how they line up for 2024. So right now, they're stacked as high as cordwood. Josh Hawley is climbing over the back of Ted Cruz, who's climbing over the back of Ron DeSantis, who's pushing out of the way. All of these people, who can be more MAGA, right? Who can be the Trumpiest Trumpo of all the Trumps? And like Donald Trump Jr., when he goes to run for president, he'll find somebody else who's trademarked the name. It's going to be a very competitive space. But what that means is that if that crowds up, so let's say the 2022 elections go like this, and I'm not saying this is the most likely scenario, but let's just say this is possible. The Republicans win this House. The Republicans better win. If the Republicans don't win the House, they will have done something. I would say they're at a 90% probability to win the House. The average is 28 seats in a president's first midterm. Loss of 28 seats in the House. Republicans are going to need what? Three or four. Depends on how final redistricting goes, but it's not going to take much. Senate is, you pick them, right? Weird primaries, bad primaries, retirements. Senate is far less correlated to the party in power in a midterm. Now, every Democrat has, since Lyndon Johnson, has lost at least one Senate seat in his first midterm. The correlation is non-existent for Republicans, but there's a light correlation, and Republicans only need one. So if the Republicans win back both houses of Congress, and they do so if they stay basically on their current trajectory, the belief will be that Trumpism works and it's okay, right? We got through. Now, it'll depend on who the candidates are, but if the Republicans win and do that, they'll go on and say it's okay. So what will happen? The populist lane will fill up, right? It will crowd to overflowing. But that means the good news for conservatives then is that lane is less crowded. There will be fewer people over there. And remember, it will be some of the same people, right? It will be some of the same people, just like Kamala Harris started out as a Bernie bro enthusiast for Green New Deals, and by the end was like, well, what I meant was it's green, money's green, and I'm ready to deal. And two different things. She misunderstood. So that's a very convoluted answer, but your takeaway, what I hope you take away is this. The most important factor for how 2024 goes will be what the received wisdom is of 2022. If the Republicans conversely miss and get shelled or have a disaster, lose the Senate because they nominate J.D. Vance or something in Ohio, things go south on them and they blow up, then the lanes will shift, right? And you'll see more people go over to the conservative lane, and moderates will show up, and the populist lane will be smaller. So is that did I evade your question successfully, Kathy? Okay, that's all I'm looking for. As Arch Moore one time said in a press conference, I thought I defeated that question. Who else? Anyone? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Chairwoman will be heard from.
I have two questions. One is bias in the media. Is it getting worse? Is it, I have my own opinion, but what do you see historically, how that's developed? Is it because of cable news and the expansion of the playing field there? The other thing is, and this just occurred to me sitting here, when we watch and see what our president's doing, we see Jen Psaki every day.
Mm-hmm.
I have never seen such a prominent voice
Mm-hmm.
as the head of communications for the president. How do you perceive that? Is that a smart thing for Biden to be doing? Because she's got to remake his statements a lot. And I'm just kind of curious, does it strike you as it's much more prominent?
Well, I think part of it is a matter of comparison, because the Trump administration did no briefings and basically would just come down and hit the press corps with a cattle prod every once in a while, shake everybody up. The most disastrous symbiotic relationship in Washington during the Trump years was between a disrespectful, surly, and unruly press corps and a Trump administration that loved it, right? Because everybody got what they wanted to out of that deal, right? So Jim Acosta or whoever could give a speech instead of asking a question and get clipped and get on his side. And then Kayleigh McEnany could insult him from the podium, and she'd get love on her side and a contract to be on Fox and Friends. So that was an unhealthy relationship. Jen Psaki is quite good at her job, right? She's very good at this. And you know who she kind of reminds me of? She kind of reminds me of Dana Perino a little bit. She likes doing it. She's good at it. She's good on her feet, and she doesn't say too much. Biden, they know, and as we've seen Biden have to be out a few times in the last several weeks, that's like watching a drunk guy try to park a car on an icy road. You're like, oh, I don't know, buddy. And like the trash can tips over a little bit, and you're like, okay. Put the emergency brake on, and we'll take it from here. For them, it is wise, right? It would be here's what you would always want if you staffed an administration. You would want a president who could talk very well whenever you needed him or her to do so, but who didn't want to do it, right? That would be the best, right? You would want a person, whatever shortcomings George W. Bush had as a communicator, he could deliver the message when he needed to deliver the message, but didn't insist on being out front all the time. Obama and Trump, we ended up with Trump talking about putting light up your rear end and drinking detergent or whatever because he was jealous that Mike Pence was getting all this good pub. All the people were like, boy, Mike Pence is doing strange new respect, surprising. Mike Pence is having these briefings and they're good and people say that they're good. And Trump is hearing this is like, whoa. And Obama, Professor Obama was the same way. He had to be out there talking all of the time. So they're in a deficiency with Biden. They know it. Biden knows it. And they're probably just doing the best they can. Polarization in the media was the problem. Now the problem is atomization in the media. So you could live your life every day in a climate-controlled 72 degrees of information where you never heard anything that you disagreed with. They would tell you that you were smart and the other people were dumb. They would tell you that you were patriotic and decent and those other people were the worst. And you would never have to hear an opposing point of view because free media stinks. If the way that you make money in media, in news, is by keeping your attention, sooner or later you are going to decide that you're not going to do anything to interrupt your customer's attention. Because you're not the customer, you're the product. You're the one that they're selling to the advertiser who says that you need a new MyPillow or here's 37 biblical hacks for better money management and diabetes cure. And that's the point, the 1/10 of a cent that comes in from that revenue. So they're going to just keep you no matter what. So I work at the Dispatch now because I now understand, I now get it. If people don't pay for the news, we all used to pay for the news. It was very normal that you paid for the news. It cost money to have a newspaper printed and brought to your house every day. That was an understanding that we all had. Now it took us no time to get to the point where we're like, I expect free news 24 hours a day, and I expect it to flatter me and my biases constantly. So now what's happening is it's not about 3 networks or 3 cable networks or whatever. It's about a bajillion websites, aggregators, social media channels that are going narrower and narrower and narrower. Are you a cat-loving socialist who also is in favor of the Second Amendment? Well, we have the Instagram IGTV channel for you. So it gets narrower and narrower, and so we went away from broadcasting. Back when I started as a newspaper man, we didn't know who was reading. Occasionally you get, H. John Rogers or somebody sends you a letter in the mail that would, quote the Talmud and tell you why, whatever you wrote was wrong, and that's fine. But you didn't really know who was out there. Now we know too much, and because we know so much, the temptation is irresistible to give the people what they want all the time, even when it's not good for them. I use the term, informational diabetes, lots of empty calories, very little nutrition. And that's the problem. And I'm at the Dispatch because if you want the news, you got to pay $8 a month for it. You got to be subscribed to the Wall Street Journal. And there's no reason anybody in this room should not have at least 2 subscriptions to pay for good news. I'd say you should do the Dispatch and the Wall Street Journal, but you should do whatever that you want to do, whatever pleases you and delights your soul. You should do that. But if you're not paying for it, you're getting what you pay for. Okay, one more? No. So, yes, I got one. Am I going to regret looking harder for the question? That's the question now.
Thanks for being here, Chris.
My pleasure.
What's your thoughts on a third-party candidate running and being successful for president?
Ranked choice voting let me say a word in defense of ranked choice voting. I don't like ranked choice voting for general elections. I think it's a bad idea because I think it would encourage single-issue candidates. I think it would encourage single-issue candidates to run. The way ranked choice voting goes is you go to vote and you pick 1, 2, 3. These are in order. It's like betting a trifecta at Wheeling Downs. You bet the 3-horse, or the 3-dog, the 2-dog, and the 1-dog in that order. And if your candidate doesn't win outright, your vote is not in the lead. Your vote rolls down to your second choice, rolls down like that. For primary elections, it could be good. It could be very good for primary elections because right now we have a problem where the incentive is to be crazier and meaner than everyone else to win your primary. Because of low barriers to entry and social media and all the problems I was just talking with the senator about, because of all of that, the incentive structures are really bad for primaries now. We have guys like Rob Portman leaving the United States Senate is crazy. Rob Portman was born in the shape of the United States Senate. Like when he showed up at the Senate dining room, they knew to bring him a half a grapefruit and some skim milk or whatever. This is a guy who was born to be in the United States Senate, and he ain't running. And if I was him, I wouldn't run either, because the Ohio senatorial primary would be a garbage fire with him in it. And he'd have to say, they would say, have you now or have you ever been affiliated with people who ever said something bad about Donald Trump? We're going to dangle you over a pot of boiling oil and see what you say. I wouldn't want to do that either. Primary elections could be very much helped by ranked choice voting, and ranked choice voting could address what you're talking about. Because here's the thing about the third party. So California's going through a recall election right now. And the ballot has 2 questions. Do you think Gavin Newsom should be removed as governor? And according to polls, and it's a weird situation because it's all mail voting, coronavirus stuff, but right now, according to polls, 45 or 48% of Californians say yes. And if 50.1% of Californians say that Newsom should be removed, he will be. Then the next question is, who do you want to be the next governor? And the current leader of the pack is Larry Elder, a conservative to libertarian talk radio host, African-American guy from California, who I would imagine probably started running as not a stunt, but like, why not, right? Why not? And he has name recognition and is getting 25% of the vote. If you ran an election that pitted Gavin Newsom against Larry Elder in California today, Larry Elder would lose by 40 points. It would be a wipeout. But if Gavin Newsom fails on the first question because people say, yeah, you know, I want something else. I mean, we always all want something else. The guy's been in office for 3 years. He broke his own coronavirus rules. His hair is fabulous, but his governance is weak. The wanting something else is very, very natural. And the third party appeal is that it's undefined. I want something else. Well, what is it? Well, it's just better than this. It's better than these two, and if we had a third party, it would be good. There is no reason to believe that the third party would be any better than the other two. And the last time we had a successful third party in America, it was the Republican Party in 1856. And the Republican Party's original name was the Anti-Kansas-Nebraska Party, and it was arranged around the idea that was arranged around the same idea as the formation of this state, which was the elimination of slavery. It had a cause, it had a purpose, and that it was the central issue defining the country today. I don't think there's any issue that comes close to creating that kind of energy in the United States. And of course, what happened with the Republicans? The Whigs went into outpatient care and then bloop, dropped right off the face of the earth. So I think that's the case. I will close with yet another unpopular opinion. I will keep it hot and say, we need 2 stronger parties. I'm not interested in a third party. I want the 2 parties we have to work again. The reason I hate McCain-Feingold was that, as Mitch McConnell rightly said, you won't take the money out of politics, but you will take the money out of the parties. So we have a situation now where the parties have no funds, no power, no nothing, and super PACs who are unaccountable to everybody, including the candidates who they support, that these super PACs show up, dump a bunch of money in a race change the contours of everything, and then they go away. It's not like a state party chairman or a national party chairman or a committee member who has a future of their own and a legacy and an institution to serve for the rest of their lives. There are people who still today, spending decades devoted to the donkeys or the elephants. And good is what I say, right? Strong parties, this is weird, but stick with me on this. Strong parties reduce partisanship. Strong parties reduce partisanship. Weak parties incentivize partisanship. Here's why. If you have a strong party, you have an institution that is in the long term thinking about its health and viability for all the days. And when somebody acts crazy and acts weird, there is a person, there is a convening authority, there is, I'm trying to think of some of the, but Ed Gillespie was probably the last of the old breed on the Republican side of a national chairman who really had stroke, really had power, people used to listen to. But we can think of Haley Barbour, and we can think of a bunch of guys. We can think of, it's interesting, they both ran for governor of Virginia, but Terry McAuliffe was sort of the last on the Democratic side where you had a real power broker powerfully running one of these great parties. Now it's not a thing. And as a consequence, there's no one to hold accountable bad actors. And there's no one to say, you're making the rest of us look bad, so you got to cut it out. So weak parties, strong partisanship, strong parties, weaker partisanship. I want to build up the two parties we have, not add another bad one. Fair? All right, I'll take it. Guys, thank you very much for making time for me today. It's always a pleasure to be in the greatest state in this great nation of ours.
Chris, thank you very much. You have a unique talent, the ability to inform and entertain at the same time. I hung on every word. You had me at hello. By the way, if my wife would make a mental note, we need to check on the cat when we get home. All right, we are drawing close to the end of this year's Business Summit, but one of the most popular things that we do every year is a release of the West Virginia poll. And this year we have Megan Pope with the Research America joining us. Research America is a market research and consumer insights company with 14 offices and 300 employees in the U.S. So if you would, help me in welcoming Megan to the podium.
All right, hello everyone. It's nice to see you. I know you are probably expecting my father, Rex Repass. He is typically here to walk through these results. We had a family medical emergency and he wasn't able to attend, so I am here in his place. I am honored to have the opportunity to share these results with you. I know that the Metro News West Virginia poll is a long-standing fixture in the state, and the results just were shared yesterday on the COVID topics that we're going to take a look at, and will be shared out tomorrow. Everything else that I'm going over today, with addition to some additional findings early next week. Okay, I get the impression that many of you are familiar with the West Virginia poll, but just in case there's someone in here that isn't, the West Virginia poll is a nonpartisan survey of public opinion that was created more than 40 years ago by my dad and Charles Ryan, and it has been for the last 40 years the way to just kind of touch base with registered voters in terms of things like public opinion, current issues, political races, and pop culture. So we are first going to take a look at the methodology. The data collection was very recent, August 20th to 25th. We wrapped on the 25th, so just shy of the recent withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan. We had 400 completed interviews, and respondents were screened and qualified as registered voters in the state. All 55 counties are represented here in the findings, and our confidence interval rating is about 5%. We'll take a look just briefly over some of the demographics. You know, we had a great sample of age, gender, educational backgrounds, political orientation, political party. And really, when you look at this data, it is very close to actual data of registered voters in the state. All right, so we are going to get started. We first asked our respondents how they felt about the direction in which both the country and the state are moving. And West Virginians are more optimistic about their state's direction than the nation as a whole. We next asked about favorability, and I want you to keep in mind, favorability is really more like likability, right? You know, who do you want to go have a Coke with, or who do you want to spend some time with? And the actual question was, below are some names of people and organizations that have been in the news. For each, please indicate if you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion of that person or organization. As you can see, Governor Jim Justice, Donald Trump, in the Republican Party, rated the most favorable. On the other hand, you have President Biden in the Democratic Party with a lower favorability rating. Taking a look at Senator Shelley Moore Capito and Senator Joe Manchin, they both had strong favorability scores. Okay. We spent some time in the study asking respondents to think about how different individuals are doing their job. You know, do they feel like they're doing a good job? What is their approval rating? So the question was, do you approve or disapprove of the job of the following public figures? The first was Joe Biden as president. So President Biden's job approval rating is slightly higher than former President Obama's last approval rating. So we're looking at an approval rating that we did for President Obama in 2016, and they are very, very similar. Looking at the same question, and for comparison, President Biden's job approval rating is significantly lower than former President Trump's first approval rating. When asked about Senator Capito's approval, Senator Shelley Moore Capito's job approval rating remains positive. As you can see, there was a small dip around 2017, but that has stabilized and continued to raise. And Senator Joe Manchin's job approval rating has dipped a bit from 49% in 2019 to 42% in 2021. Governor Jim Justice's job approval ratings began to rise in 2019 and continued to increase during the past 2 years. You know, as you may recall, Governor Justice received national praise for his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic, and so we have a feeling that that impacted this raise over the last 2 years. These next few slides are going to be covering COVID and how respondents feel about the COVID-19 pandemic in the state. So when asked about overall satisfaction regarding how Governor Justice has handled the COVID-19 pandemic, a majority of registered voters, 71%, are satisfied with how Governor Justice has handled the pandemic. A majority of voters are concerned about COVID-19 and the emerging variants. So there's been a lot of that in the news and talk lately, and it does seem that a large amount of voters are concerned about these emerging variants. 7 in 10 West Virginians have been vaccinated, and 8% more are planning to be vaccinated. And 70% of West Virginians believe COVID-19 vaccine is effective, which is higher than we are seeing in other states. 70% believe that the COVID vaccine is effective. Okay, now on to some more hot topics. These are some conversations you may have seen in other national polls, and we were really careful to use similar language. So West Virginians were asked, what comes closer to your view of the 2020 election? And there are two options to answer that question, where it was legitimate and accurate, or it was the result of illegal voting or election rigging. West Virginia voters are split on whether the 2020 election was legitimate or rigged, with 44% feeling that it was legitimate, and then just 43% feeling that it was the result of some illegal voting or election rigging. Another controversial topic we have seen discussed largely. We asked about the January 6th riots at the Capitol. And the question was, thinking about the riots that took place at the Capitol on January 6th, while Congress was in the process of certifying Electoral College votes from the 2020 presidential election, how much, if at all, do you think Donald Trump was responsible for the riots and the events that took place at the Capitol on January 6th? As you can see, West Virginia voters are also divided on whether Donald Trump was responsible for the January 6th riots at the Capitol. 46% felt that he was a great deal or had a fair amount of responsibility, while 51% felt that he did not have any involvement or not much at all. All right, now we're going to move on to something fun. I hear that this audience likes to talk about WVU and Marshall sports, so we decided to ask our voters some questions around sports. The first one was pretty simple. We asked them how closely they follow college sports. About half of voters follow sports closely, while the other half don't pay a lot of attention. We then asked about the SEC adding in Texas and OU into that conference. The question was, do you think the Southeastern Conference adding the universities of Texas and Oklahoma is good for college sports or not? Nearly 40% of voters believe that the SEC adding the universities of Texas and Oklahoma is good for college sports. So then we went on to have a further conversation. You know, the consolidation of some of these conferences is going to impact other universities. So we asked, if college sports conferences consolidate further, and the options for West Virginia University sports are as follows, what would be your first, second, and third preference? So if college sports conferences were to consolidate further, a slight plurality of fans prefer that WVU move to the ACC, followed closely by stay in the Big 12, but add in universities from other conferences. And then as a distant third, move to the Big 10 Conference, and even a more distant fourth, move to the SEC. And thank you all so much for your time today. It was an honor to share these findings with you. As I mentioned, the COVID results were published today. Everything else that we shared will be published tomorrow, with additional findings from other questions in the survey out Tuesday through Thursday of next week. Thank you so much.
Megan, thank you, and I hope things are okay back home. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the conclusion of the Chamber's 85th Annual Meeting and Business Summit. If you would, we've just got a few housekeeping items to go over before we adjourn. I will tell you, I was catching up on the news here last evening, and I was perusing through the Washington Post, and they were talking about Senator Manchin's comments here. And I'll read to you a line out of that article. Manchin's op-ed came a day after he delivered a similar warning shot at a little-known event hosted by the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce. Friends, I think this has been a fabulous event. This is an example of what makes this state great, bringing everybody together. I wish I subscribed to the Washington Post so I could cancel the damn thing. If you would, join me in recognizing our chamber staff. This has been an awesome business summit, and it's through them. I want to thank all our sponsors. They helped make this possible. Without them, we couldn't have done it. And the Greenbrier staff. You know, we have so much hospitality from them. They do a good job. Thank you. Name tags, if you would, we will recycle them. If you throw your name tags out on the table on your way out, we'll recycle them and save them for next year. Okay, I guess many of you are sticking around. Oh, and I want to thank the state troopers. We've had state troopers here the entire time. Thank you for keeping us safe. It's much appreciated. Abby Honecker came to me and said that she wanted to hear my name when we were discussing drawing of winners. So I've mentioned Abby's name. I don't know if she's won, but okay, you've got it. So I'm going to announce the names of our winners, and frankly, if you have a complicated name, I'm pretty certain you're not going to win. The winner of the iPad is Evan Vaughn of Makerik Action. So, Evan, you won yourself an iPad. Now, here's one, a guy that's got a place here, but Jay Goldman, you've won a stay at the Greenbrier. Stephen Crislip, you have won yourself an iWatch, an Apple Watch, so congratulations. And Christy Arrowwood, you've won Fiesta Wear. So those are winnings of the drawing. Again, thank you all for participating in this year's summit. I think